My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, the person who we were waiting for has arrived, so we're going to get started. Let's begin. Hello. My name is Ines Pegues. I'm president of the Greater Hartford African American Alliance. Most Hartford residents are faceless, powerless, and ignored, except at election time. During this season, individuals who want to lead Hartford seek our vote with promises of this or that. What have the votes from the black community gotten us? Some are very happy. Others say very little. The next leaders of Hartford must have the intent and the will to end the practices and habits that have brought us to the dead end where some of us, many of us, find ourselves. There are community schools that fail to adequately prepare all students to be productive members of society. A police department where the men and women in blue do not culturally and racially reflect the community they serve. And economic development in which people with large wallets invade Hartford, take over the properties, develop them at a cost to local taxpayers, at least as some people see it, extract rent from the locals, fail to maintain their properties, and eventually exit with boatloads of profit. All of this is permitted to go on in part because of the manner in which City Hall operates today and has operated for many years prior to today. There is too much nepotism or favoring the hiring of friends and family members.
Please keep the mic close to you when you're talking, everyone. Thank you.
Who, in addition to not being the best qualified, are often unfamiliar with the job they are hired to do. The city must strive to hire workers who are committed to Hartford over the long haul, and not just long enough to pad their resumes for the next higher paying job somewhere else. In addition, the loss of institutional knowledge due to the persistent turnover in important departments within City Hall, which have included from time to time the police department and public works, must be addressed. The newly hired deciders are often paid exorbitant salaries while they undergo on-the-job training from lower-paid workers who have been employed for years in Hartford. To get these issues addressed in a legal and an effective manner requires each of you in the audience to focus on what is said and, more importantly, what is meant. Listen carefully to the responses of each candidate. Use your common sense and your experience as a Hartford resident to determine whether the statements heard are nothing more than empty promises to get your vote on November 5th. Ignore the fancy words and the smiling faces. Look deeper. Are the ideas and plans good for Hartford? Do you think that he or she is committed to staying as long as necessary during the implementation process? And finally, does he or she have the strength of character and the will to attack? I don't care what you want to call it, so I'm going to use all the words because I do not want to offend anyone. To attack the favoritism, the racism, or the unequal opportunity and access that impedes Hartford's return to the glory days of a vibrant downtown surrounded by thriving, racially diverse neighborhoods. Your vote is precious. Use it wisely. Thank you.
What happens in the voting booth stays in the voting booth. Even if someone wheels you up to the polling station after buying your groceries or paying you by the hour to door knock, you still can vote like an independent thinker. Vote like you're demanding better police accountability. Vote like you're demanding functioning schools that put Hartford children first. Vote like you're demanding your mayor puts Hartford residents and neighborhoods first. Vote like Hartford's government belongs to you, the constituent. Because to the party, you are just a vote. However, to me, you are a constituent, my boss. And I work for you. So when you go into the voting booth, have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for a man you can trust to be accountable to the constituents of Hartford. My name is J. Stan McCauley. I'm an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote on Tuesday, November the 5th, 2019, in the general election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. And remember, what happens in the voting booth stays in the voting booth. Escape the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
For those of you who believe that we're dealing with new issues in the city of Hartford, can I just point you to the work of the Greater Hartford Urban League, who have taken a page out of the National Urban League's book, and they produce every so often the State of Black Hartford. Now, this was produced in '93. The issues in this book were relevant then, and they're relevant now. If you're not aware of this text, find it, get a copy, become familiar with it if, in fact, you care about Hartford, the people in it, and the issues. The most recent, The State of Black Hartford, was produced in 2016. Really important volumes about our local community. Let me give you the framework for tonight's debate. As you can see, we have a very large group of people who are interested in leading this wonderful city. The one that I learned today is the 9th most badly managed in the country. Rather interesting, I thought. We have 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, the first segment is going to be taken up with you as the audience listening to the individuals on the podium who are interested in getting your vote and getting your support to become the next mayor of the city of Hartford. The second segment, or the second hour, will be taken up with questions from you, the audience. you will be given an opportunity to ask questions. Now, the podium members are going to get 2 minutes to respond to the questions that I ask. And you, as the audience, will be given the same 2 minutes or less to ask your questions. No statements. If you would like to make statements, then I suggest the next time around you also run for the position of mayor of the city of Hartford. It's always there and vacant and available. So on the stage with me tonight, we have the incumbent mayor, the current mayor. Please, show of hands, by the way. We cannot assume that everybody in the audience know who you all are, famous as you are in the city. Okay? So we have Luke Bronin, who is the current mayor. I'd ask you to hold your applause. Hold your applause, please, please, please. It's time consuming. Let's get through this and really applause when there's a reason to applause. All right? I'm introducing them. Just hold the applause for a minute. We have the former mayor, Eddie Perez. We have State Representative Brandon McGee. Yes. And we have former chair of the Board of Education in Hartford, Craig Stallings. And we have our entrepreneur, TV no doubt, is Mr. J. Stan McCauley. And we also have Giselle, is that the correct way to pronounce your name? Jacobs. She is also an entrepreneur. She has a cleaning company. We have Dr. Aaron Lewis. Where's Dr. Lewis? Okay, he's absent. All right, so we don't have him. We have Andre Thomas. Is that you, Andre? Show the people. Let them see you. Okay, good enough. So what I'm going to do is have a broad field of questions around economic development, the municipal workforce. Where's Michael? Michael, I didn't say Michael. I am so sorry. Mr. Downs, a union organizer. Michael, you know I didn't mean that, right? Of course. So Michael Downs, I'm sorry, I apologize. Economic development, municipal workforce, housing issues, school issues or education issues, public safety issues, large nonprofit issues, the business of city pensions, the promise zone issue, and then I'm going to ask some very specific questions to each individual up here on the podium, because whether we like it or not, and despite the fact that we have a president in the White House who can do no wrong according to him, character still matters. All right? And so it's going to be important to hear something about the character of the candidates. And this question that I'm throwing out goes to all of you. You have 2 minutes or less to answer. It's on economic development. There is little or no outreach to harness public-private investments with black entrepreneurs in the city. Assuming you have a position on this issue, how do you see it working, and what role, if any, do you see startups playing? That's one question. And I'd like to start with Mr. McCauley, to my far left.
Good evening, everyone. 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
I think that, you talk about economy. Economy is local. Yes, the bottom line is money in your pocket. Hartford is one of 150 economically distressed cities in the United States. Every zip code, with the exception of 06103, is in economic distress. That's even the zip codes over in the West End, economic distress. And if we're going to talk about economy, we're going to talk about real tackling of that distress. It's putting money in your pockets so that money can rotate and move around. In an e-commerce society, the playing field has been leveled for startup companies, small businesses, entrepreneurs. What we don't have is intentional focus on trying to help those individuals succeed. I believe that we need to give the same types of incentives to entrepreneurs that we give to multi-million-dollar national corporations to move into the city. who say they're going to hire, but then either don't or move after they've hired people and made different arrangements. So I will be focused on economic development by investing in our citizens who want to start businesses, because small businesses hire most of the people in America. And if we're going to restart our local economy, we're going to have to restart our local businesses.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. McCauley. Can I move down, Michael?
Michael Downs. Well, minority entrepreneurs and people start up businesses should be given every opportunity and encouragement to begin a business in Hartford and to be successful. And they should be given every opportunity to move into the most beneficial areas of the city to be successful. And we should, as a city, should be governed by people that live in the city. We should encourage people that live in the city to set up businesses in the city and move the money around among the people that live in the city.
Thank you. Representative McGee.
Thank you, and thank you to the organizers, excuse me, of this event. And I'm very delighted that this room is jam-packed with Hartford residents to discuss the matters at hand. I think the question really focused on how would your administration support small businesses, identify opportunities for startups, but most importantly, provide opportunities to those communities or neighborhoods that have been overlooked and under-resourced. One of the things that I would do firstly is to start out with our neighborhood revitalization zones, or NRZs. Many of them have plans that have been on the shelves for many, many years. Those are the individuals that are comprised of businesses, residents, and others who make up these entities, these zones, these NRZs that help to direct what's happening at City Hall. So executing on those plans. But also, for example, here in North Hartford, we have a plan called Revitalize, Reimagine, Reassert North Main Street. Been working on a plan for almost 4 years, including the businesses, the residents in this city, and to hear back from them, what is it exactly that you would want on North Main Street or on the main corridor? Silence. One of the things that I would do would execute on many of these plans that you all have provided to us, and sticking to the plan and the promises that we made to our neighbors. And then lastly, utilizing some of our existing corporations and larger businesses to figure out how we could leverage their clientele to help support many of our small businesses. And lastly, I think this is one that many of you small businesses would appreciate, is waiving your taxes for a number of years so that you have an opportunity to weather the storm, but also to hire locally, and then maybe we'll get you back on the books. But we gotta figure out how to support our small businesses, small business owners, and startups in our city. Thank you.
Time. Thank you. Mayor Perez.
Good evening. Good evening to all. Thank you to the organizers for bringing us together, and most importantly for all of you who are here to hear our words and think about our deeds. Think about our deeds. The best predictor of the future is what happened in the past. One model that I'm very proud of is the work that we did with the school building committee, where we made sure that we had a set-aside program, and that set-aside program was based on the capacity of the folks who were already here to deliver and to take that work on. And the more important part is the support you give to those businesses. Even if they have to work, they still need help and support. I would duplicate what's happened downtown. The Capital Development Authority. Maybe we should have a Hartford Neighborhood Development Authority, and the amount of money that went to downtown, maybe if we just get 50% of the money we spent downtown spread between North Hartford and South Hartford and Central Hartford, it would be a great plan, even if it only lasted for 4 or 5 years. But equally important is working with the infrastructure that we have. We already have neighborhoods. We already have NRCs. We have businesses that are successful, and we should be supporting those businesses before we try to bring in new businesses. In each and every neighborhood, there are needs already, and we're not dealing with those needs. So the first thing I would do is help the folks that are there, and then fill in the gaps where we have gaps with new small businesses throughout the city with a commitment to each and every neighborhood.
Thank you, Giselle.
How y'all doing? Glad to be here this evening. Giselle, entrepreneur, veteran of the United States Army. I stand here before you not to tell you what you probably should already know as it relates to being an entrepreneur and what would best help me grow my business and what would best help other entrepreneurs in our community grow our business. We are the best ones to be able to tell you that, and I'm not here to speak to that. What I'm here to speak to is what I'm already doing on a daily basis as it relates to citizens in our community, as it relates to citizens who would like to be entrepreneurs, from the 18-year-old high school student who I hired back in January to the 60-year-old veteran who's retired and just needed to make a few extra dollars. We are our solutions. We are the best ones to be able to say what we need as it relates to growing our business. I'm not going to make promises that I probably won't keep. The problems that we're having in the city of Hartford are not new. You know, I agree that, you know, there are plans that have been in place that have been sitting on the shelves that could probably be of most benefit to us. And let's put it to work. But what I won't do is stand here and make promises just to get a vote. I'm not going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Berman?
Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you to the organizers and thanks to everybody for coming out. It is great to see such a strong turnout on a beautiful July now evening. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we are doing. The first thing, which to me was absolutely critical, is that even as we faced our budget crisis, we refused to raise taxes on Hartford small businesses, because for year after year that had been the answer. Let's just keep raising taxes. And that's the biggest barrier to a small business in Hartford. That's one of the biggest costs that a small business pays. So we said we won't do it under any circumstances. We've also right now, we have a grant program where we're using community development block grant dollars, and we've gone out and made sure that small businesses around the city, and especially in the North End, know about that opportunity to get grants that can help them do everything from, you know, investing in their facade to investing in, you know, a new hood on the kitchen equipment so that they can begin to grow their business. We have focused on executing the plans that have been out there. You know, if you look at what's happening on Albany Avenue, that plan had been on the books for 30 years, but nobody worked to get it done. And we said we're going to get it done. The same thing is true about, you know, getting Weaver and MLK up, but also Westbrook Village, which is going to have a commercial piece down on Albany Avenue. We actually do have a neighborhood version of the Capital Region Development Authority. It's the neighborhood funds. And it's that funding that's let projects like the Swift Factory, part of Bowles Park, the renovation of Quirk Middle School, where we're training Hartford residents in the trades as part of that program. It's helped make those things possible. We also brought in a national organization, in partnership with the Hartford Foundation. It's called the Inner City Capital Connections. And more than 60 Hartford businesses are now working with them, getting training, but also getting connected to some of the sources of capital and building partnerships. So we have a lot of work underway. Is there more to do? Absolutely. A lot more to do. Right? And we're going to keep pushing hard every day. Something that's already been said that I want to say is a big issue is we do need to encourage our big businesses in Hartford to buy more locally.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Stallings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm on now. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Stallings, former chairman of the Board of Education. And what I would do is think outside the box. You heard the mayor, you heard many of my colleagues here talk about existing programs and structures that are in place. But what we're not doing is thinking outside the box and creating industry and concentrating on creating an intentional local economy that's going to support us. For example, Many of our young people have an entrepreneurial spirit, but they do not understand the industry, do not understand business, they understand corporate business. I'm a business owner, I own a tax business. I have over 1,000 clients throughout the country. I have clients in Arizona, I have clients in Oregon, I have clients in California. So, like one of my colleagues said, we need to take advantage of e-commerce. We need to promote warehousing and things like that to fill some of these empty storefronts. But more importantly, we need to focus on hiring our young people, creating a talent pool that is going to create business right here, green businesses, that is going to generate a whole new market. International business, we restrict ourselves. And what's killing our community is the lack of self-reliance. We have to intentionally support one another. We have to intentionally work with one another. We have to create relationships where we can grow, agree to disagree, not feud, but pool our talent together. We have a lot of contractors. We have contractors that specialize in sheetrock. We have contractors that are electricians. If all of our contractors got together and formed a corporation, then we are in business. We can compete with multi-million-dollar contracts. We can hire our young people. We can build talent pipelines. So we have to think systematically. We have to think together, and we have to strategize together. The mayor can't lead this. This has to come from us. This has to be a grassroots effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. Thompson? The question is, there's little outreach to harness public-private investment with Black entrepreneurs in the city. Assuming you have a position on the issue, how do you see it working, and what role, if any, do you see startups playing?
I think,
Stand up, please.
I think that we don't have many. I think a lot of people are afraid to invest in the community because of the crime. I think a lot of people say that they're going to invest and they don't. I think a lot of people show up because it's election time or they want these seats. I think a lot of this comes within our community investing. We have to invest. We have to believe in our city. I mean, it's just not about the talk, it's about doing. I think that for people to want to build businesses, we have to show that Hartford is ready for these businesses. We have to support our community and the people that live in the city to be successful. I think that we have to take a chance in investing in our city, because if we don't invest, then nobody will. I mean, everybody talks about doing it, but over these years, nobody has done it. So in order to move forward, we need to bring the people in here that's willing to do it, and we need to stop talking and do it, and we need to invest in the programs that we start out in. After a year or two, they fail. I mean, they start up programs and they fail. I've been in all these programs and they last a year or two, and there's always talking about money has vaporized or exhaust. I mean, we need to believe in it and stick with it. That's what.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, continuing with economic development. Hartford is a minority-majority city, meaning the majority population in the city of Hartford is not white. But the majority of the city contracts, construction and otherwise, are awarded to people of European ancestry. What specific plan do you have to guarantee that Hartford's business people will be awarded the majority of construction contracts and other contracts in the city? Can I start in the middle with Ms. Jacobs? Sure. And then going down to via Mayor Perez. Thank you.
Repeat that question one more time.
The question essentially is saying, Hartford is not a city of majority white people.
Yes.
Contracts are given based upon this minority-majority concept. And so the majority of people in the city of Hartford who happen to be African Latino people are not given the majority of those contracts. What plan do you have to change that formula?
Whew. Where do I begin? At one point, I was the Assistant Executive Director of the Minority Construction Council. As a matter of fact, it was approximately 10 years ago in 2009. And what I learned while in that position, that there are contracts being granted via backroom deals. It's not about what you know, it's about who you knew. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. If we're going to ensure that the majority of the contracts, construction contracts, go to the majority of the individuals who live in our communities, we are going to have to look more closely at the process, at the RFP process. It's going to have to be more oversight. We're constantly told that there's not enough qualified individuals in our community to fulfill the 30% quota. Actually, it should be 60 or 90%. If 90% of the individuals who live out here look like us, that's who should be working on these contracts. And, I went through construction training right in this very room in 2011. Most of those individuals who went through class with me are either dead, incarcerated, or out of work. That should not be. So it's not that we don't have qualified individuals to work in our community. We need to look at the process. And what's been happening in our community is not new. It's been going on. There's a dark cloud over the city of Hartford. And until we get to the crux of what's going on, until the leaders who have been leaders in our community speak up, stop selling out, only then will we get to the solution.
You go, girl.
Everybody up on this panel need to take a lie detector test and see how many individuals have taken monies from Luke to be up here and split our black vote. There's some shit going on in our community, and we are dying because of it. Somebody needs to tell the truth around here, and I'm not the best person to do it. You are. One's up here.
Right, thank you, Ms. Jacob. Hello, let's hear from the candidates. Thank you. May we have the former mayor and parent? Wow. Correct.
Somebody has already said, it's working, right?
Yes.
So somebody has already said, don't make promises that you can't keep, right? So people have to understand that most of the money that comes here to the city of Hartford comes with strings attached. It's called the federal government, the state government, and in some cases from the corporate and philanthropic community. So for me to stand here and tell you that it's going to be 90% black and brown, no, it's going to be green. It's going to be green money. And the only way we're going to get our hands on that green money, I mentioned before, we have to have capacity. It's not about the employment. The employment, you could probably do a lot more than the 30% employment, maybe 30, 40, 50%, but you're going to get to a point where you can't find the people to do the work. So you have to work on the number one priority that we should have as a community, which is our school system. When you let the school system die, the community dies. And all of us have seen the state take over the schools. Everybody, when I was mayor, I spent my time on the schools because I cared about the kids in the city of Hartford. The kids become adults. And she's right. There's a destination for them. If they're not working in Hartford, if they're not homeowners in Hartford, if they're not business owners in Hartford, they end up in jail, dead, or unemployed and hanging out our corners. If I'm mayor, you're going to continue to see that I make a difference. I made a difference for 10 years when I was mayor. I made a difference for 10 years when I was at Trinity College, and I made a 10 difference when I was right across the street at one chain doing my work.
Representative McGee, may we hear from you, please? Yes, Brandon.
Do you mind repeating the question, please?
The question said, Hartford is a minority majority city. What plans do you have to change the formula that allows for contracts to be given to those people who do not make up the majority within the city of Hartford?
Just for the record, I've received no money from anybody on this panel, nor have I received money from Luke Bronin. So just for the record. And that is true. Now, one of the things that I think it's important that we understand when we talk about minority contracting when we talk about opportunities for Black and brown that have started their businesses in this community. And African American Alliance has been a hub and a safe space for many of the contractors in this city. We need oversight. I think, number one, the plan and the rules are already there. So sure, former mayor, he mentioned all of the strings attached. I think a better way of saying that is there are rules and there is a law that guides many of these contracts. However, as mayor, I will champion for more opportunities for Black and brown contractors in this city. You will see less of many of these trucks from Massachusetts and all of these other places by using individuals in our community. One of the things that I really would like to address is small businesses started by formerly incarcerated. There are so many pieces of red tape and barriers that many of these individuals are faced with, and they want to start businesses, but guess what? The door is slammed on them.
Can't get loans.
So we need to figure out, we can work with local banks. That's not necessarily true. We can work with local banks and we can give opportunities to those small businesses and here in our city. And as a state representative, that's one of the things we're working on with the Banking Commission and the Committee on Banking to figure out how to address those barriers.
Thank you. Michael?
I'm not on the take from anybody. I'm presently unemployed, so I'm looking for money. As opposed to 18 or 20 years ago, I do have an automobile, though I don't depend on someone to give me a ride home like Eddie Perez did in 2001. First thing is we cheat our children in this city by not offering the courses that they need to prepare themselves for work and the system in some of these contracts and jobs that require skilled labor. We don't have any vocational technical education in the school system anymore. No family consumer science, no culinary. So we have the skills are out of the system, so they're behind the eight ball right there. One way to encourage to get minority contractors involved is to go to the present minority people who are presently have a job, have a business open up, and ask them if they are interested in expanding or getting a contract available to getting involved with.
Brandon, let him use
I
your
tried
mic.
to give him the mic. I don't think he wanted to take it.
Getting involved with a contract and getting and to possibly be able to handle a large job that comes down. I know that a lot of these are federal and state funds that require a certain job and to be done in a certain amount of time. But
Mike, thank you.
opportunity. Okay.
Thank you. Next, 2 minutes, remember, so organize your thoughts around 2 minutes, please.
I have technically been unemployed since 2007, so, you know, I'm definitely not on the take. I could use the money, trust me. I've spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars recording conversations around the city over the last couple of years, so I could definitely use the money. So, you know, Mr. Bronin is not putting money into my coffers. Trust me on that one. You know, this is really a simple question. It demands a simple answer. Oversight. Will you be intentional in making sure that 30% of the work that's supposed to be done by minority contractors or Hartford residents is actually done? You need staff that can do the work, and you need the ability to go out and check job sites. We need capacity, we need all those other things. Sister Giselle had her life threatened trying to make this stuff happen. And I would suggest to you that what this community lacks Is leadership willing to take a bullet? Because at the end of the day, this is not child's play. It's like the former mayor said. People can stand up here and make promises, but there's a lot at stake here. And if you think you're going to walk in and upset the apple cart, it's not going to happen that way. So are you intentional? Are you dedicated to the community to fight for what the community wants as it relates to minority set-aside programming? I close with this. If the town is black and brown, like 80, 90%, then we're not the majority. So really, technically, 30% of the work should be going to folk that don't look like us. And the other 70, by default, should come to us. If we're talking about minority set-asides. We are not the minority in this city. That's right. Just food for thought.
Thank you. Can we come to this end, please, and hear from Mr. Thompson? Mr. Thompson, then Craig, then Mayor Brown. 2 minutes. Speak up, project.
Turn it on, turn it on. Hello?
It's on.
Well, personally, I think, we are a minority and everything. I mean, I stood up here and,
Thanks, Ben.
hello?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Andre Thompson. I'm a lifelong native. I decided to give this a chance because, it's not no, shade to anybody, but, everybody always talking about, changing the outlook of Hartford. But I mean, I've been to all these programs, these pilot programs. Everybody's talking about making these changes, but nobody made these changes. Everybody had the time to do it. I mean, all these political figures been here for the longest and have done nothing. I mean, everything has to change with everybody that has been here already. We need new people and new views, because if it didn't work in the past, it's not working now. So the only way we can do this is to bring new views and new people. I mean, a lot of people don't want to open these businesses and invest because the crime rate, and a lot of people had these opportunities and done nothing, only to certain sides of our city, or just show up because they want these opportunities to have these jobs. But I've been in these streets, and I've been to the Stride program, I've been to the Urban League, I've been to the Chrysalis Center, and they don't have no money. Everything's exhausted, and where's the money going? Like, so everybody's talking all this good talk, but I don't see nobody up here in these streets like I'm in these streets. I mean, I'm really in these streets looking for these programs. Stride, Urban League, I've been through all these Hartford schools. I've never left because there's no opportunity. I stick with Hartford because I want the opportunity. I want opportunity for Hartford to be better, and for it to be better, we have to want better, and we have to want it for ourselves, and all this is just good time.
I'm sorry.
If I may, please forgive me, I got called like 5 minutes before this was to happen to set up the mic, so.
Don't
just give
apologize
us-
now.
We'll get it.
Don't apologize now. We're good. Craig, we're good.
Wow. Anyway, we have to be intentional about enforcing what's already on the books. We don't have inspectors, but when you start to look at the inner workings and the structure, we need minority project managers. When we solicit and advertise and get contracts and RFPs for project managers, it normally is the same project manager we had for the past 10, 15 years. And when you look at the way it's structured, your friends become your constituents. So now, if I'm an inspector or I work for the city and I'm working with this particular program manager and you don't meet a particular quota, I may not stress you about it because we're friends. I may cut a corner or two. And so my point again is about governance. It's about intentional governance. It's about management. It's about creating mechanisms that are going to work. It's about creating efficiency in our systems. And yes, I would change the formula. I would change the formula within the first 6 months. I would make sure that if it's not 50-50, it's tilting to Hartford, in favor of Hartford. I would make sure that it's legally done. I would make sure it's done based on equity. And then I would make sure that the city workers that are working in City Hall live in Hartford, have a special interest in Hartford, have a dedicated interest in making sure Hartford is developed, so they will selfishly and biasly choose the correct and right program manager and right contracts.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. Next, Mayor Brown.
Thank you. So, what Mayor Perez said is right, that when you're spending federal money, state money, as almost all the projects that we do in Hartford do, there are limits on what you can do. We have the most aggressive set-aside program in the state. It deals with both a percentage of minority contractors as well as resident hiring. And we have been enforcing. If you look at a project like Weaver, we have more than exceeded the goals that have been set there. But I think this is really important. Why is it that our local contractors don't get more of it? There are a couple of reasons. One, when you're spending that federal state money, the requirement is you got to go to the low bidder, right? The biggest guys can always come in with the lowest bid, right? And so then the question is, how do we make sure that our local ones have a shot? We have an ordinance that says if you're a local company and you're within 15% of that low bid, you get a chance to match it. But for a lot of our companies, they still can't match it because they're not big enough. So how do you give them the opportunity to grow? You try to make sure that more smaller projects at least can go to our local contractors. I'll give you an example. We're doing a bunch of sidewalk work this summer, including a number of projects in our neighborhoods. Instead of just doing one big contract, we broke it up into a number of smaller ones so that our local contractors would have an easier time posting the bond and being able to go after that work and get it. We actually wanted to break it up smaller, and the state wouldn't, and waive the bonding requirement altogether, and the state wouldn't let us. But that gets to a key issue. There are some state restrictions that make it hard, and we got to continue to work together. Everybody up here work together to advocate for some of those changes. And lastly, we really are focusing on trying to train our local residents. I mentioned before the court project, where we're renovating court. That we're putting more money into that project than it costs, so that we can spend money on training Hartford residents to get that experience, so that when we've got another project, whether it's Martin Luther King or something else, we can't say there's nobody who's trained to do that job.
Time.
We just train them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next question, beginning with you, Mayor Bronan. Tax exemptions, tax abatement, and civil rights exemptions appear to account for 2/3 of municipal employees of the city of Hartford being non-residents, at least according to Hartford News. How do you plan to increase the number of Hartford residents employed by the city of Hartford, and what do you intend to do about the absence of civil rights requirements on the part of corporations within the city?
So I understand a part of that question. I'll be honest, there's a part of that question I don't understand. I don't understand the connection to tax abatements, but I'll do my best to answer the question about local hiring. We've been working really hard to recruit and to attract local Hartford residents as we've hired. We've been hiring at DPW. We did a lot of hiring at the fire department, where we have, I think, if it's not the most diverse fire department in the country, it's one of the most diverse fire departments in the country. I think it might be the most, and I think our Chief Freeman has done a tremendous job as he's worked to rebuild that fire department and hire so many people. At the police department, we've been working hard to try to get more local residents in. I will say this. We are not allowed, under state law, to require anybody who's a member of a union to live in Hartford. So if it's a union job, we can't require you. We can, as we do with fire, say you've got to be a Hartford resident before you can apply. But we're not allowed to say that you have to live in the city once you get the job. There's a state law that was passed many years ago that prohibits it. But we're trying as hard as we can to make sure that we're spreading the word about those job opportunities, that we're working extra hard with candidates through the process, that we're coaching through the process, because we want Hartford residents to get the job. Now, I'm going to also say something that you all know is true. A lot of times, when we are successful in getting a Hartford resident to get a city job, they move out of the city.
Thank you, Mayor. We can come back to you on the questioning.
He has 25 seconds.
Would you like to timekeep? Yeah. Okay, go ahead and do that. You got a timekeeper. I didn't have him all night anyway. So you'll be good, because you're on it. Yeah. May I take your 25 seconds? You're good.
Where was I? I was so interested in that exchange.
No, you have an advocate. Go on ahead and take your 25 seconds. We're good. It should be, you're right, but go ahead. Take
So what I was saying, the truth is, we know a lot of times, and we understand it, but there are families that will get those jobs and move out. We want to make sure that those workers stay here. And so as we do the work of trying to combat blight in the city, which we've made a real priority, I would like to build some programs where we can incentivize Hartford residents to be here and to stay here and to get, to partner with us to fix up some houses and stick around.
Is that good? 25 seconds, you got it. Ms. Jacobs, thank you. May we hear from you, please? The question relates to the absence, generally, of Hartford residents as employees within the municipality and within various corporations that are in the city who've been given exemption from civil rights law requirements.
I would have had an opportunity to read that book that you mentioned. What I was saying, I really wish I would have had an opportunity to read that book, because I'm believing that a lot of those questions have come out of that book, and haven't had an opportunity to read it ahead of time. I may be more up on top of these questions, but I'm going to answer the question as it relates to the experience that most of us have in our community, as it relates to the lack of Hartford residents that work for the city of Hartford and at other private industries in our community. And of course, there's a lot of nepotism that goes on. If you have a family member that works for the city of Hartford, then you're more likely to get a job. Of course, if you speak bilingual, you're more likely to get a job at the city of Hartford. However, when you walk into City Hall, you see most offices closed, especially if you're going to pay your taxes. One person, and that's it. So as it relates to the civil rights quota and what's needed and what's necessary to ensure that the majority of the individuals who, there should be a requirement, a residency requirement for individuals who want to work in our city or in private. Right now, we have more individuals coming through our community into Hartford to work, only to leave on Friday after getting paid, tearing up our streets, all our potholes, and, listen, oftentimes the damage is being done by individuals who don't live here, who don't pay taxes here, and it has to stop. As I stated earlier, I'm not a politician. I'm standing up here as a single parent. I have 3 sons, one of which who have recently returned home. Listen, if you want to know my opinion, the most brilliant minds are incarcerated, but they're returning home. And they need to be able to return home to work. Thank you.
Mayor Perez.
2 minutes doesn't allow anybody to give you a real answer other than tease you about what's in my mind. So in order to do more hiring in Hartford or Hartford residents, you have to prepare individuals, you have to train individuals, you have to recruit individuals from the city, and then you have to hire them and retain them. If you hire them and you get rid of them in the middle of their career, it's not a good thing. That's the institutional memory that we lose every time we get rid of an employee that has been serving our city for so long. And in Hartford, we don't do anything at the front end. We wait for an application, and the first thing we tell people, you don't qualify because there's 2 requirements that you don't qualify. If you prepare people and you train folks, and our school system was doing part of that job, we would have a workforce that was ready to do efficient, good work for a city, and it could be black and brown people all over City Hall.
Thank you. Representative McGee, go ahead.
One of the things that I'd like to do, and it's already been said, but that is to offer job training, which we have plenty of, but connect jobs to those job training programs. But you mentioned something about social justice or something of another in your civil rights. Gentrification is real if y'all see it and feel it in North Hartford and throughout this city. Meaning there are a lot of people coming in, driving through our streets, looking to purchase property in our city, but really don't care about the folks who live in our city. So one of the things that I like to do is make sure that many of our residents are protected. And when you begin talking about job opportunities and talk about residency requirements, which that's on the books, by the way, those who are the highest paid, they lead departments, are required to live in our city, okay? I would encourage more people to live in our city if you are benefiting from the taxpayers' dollars by way of paying your salary. But we also have to address criminal justice, or rather public safety in our communities, and we also have to address our housing stock, making it a place where people want to live, and creating opportunities for those who live here to really appreciate the communities that they live in. And obviously, at the core of this, the foundation of it, is our education system.
Thank you. Michael?
Okay, well, it goes right back to our education system. We still don't have any vocational technical education. And there's none in any of the high schools, and there used to be. So our students come out of high school behind the eight ball again. They have to find a place to be trained or to get that education. If they're not in college, or many don't go to college. And what are we training for? The street corner. But we have to hire people from within the city. We have to hire our own citizens, our own people. And one way to keep people in the city would be to make attractive housing more affordable, giving reduced mortgage rates, making arrangements with mortgage companies or the banks to encourage people to remain in the city instead of getting their job as residents of the city and then running to the suburbs.
Thank you. Stan?
Unfortunately, 2 minutes just isn't enough time. You're getting anecdotal answers from people probably who have really good ideas that differ from one another, but because we have to kind of condense this and give it to you, I think you're being shortchanged. But if you put this blue card you have in your pocket, there's a 5-point plan. And what I'm talking about doing is realigning Hartford's priorities. Because it really does include education. It includes working outside of our silos. It includes economic development and community development, communications, and public safety. All of these things go into making Hartford the kind of city that then grows. Okay? I sent this in 2011 before the Democratic Town Committee that anyone who serves at the pleasure of the mayor will be a Hartford resident, and when they decide they want to move, they can do so by tendering their resignation as it relates to department heads. I meant it then, I mean it now. I am sincerely dogged on that point. But that's about it. I can't make people live in the city that work for the city, and I think the question really was about my ability to make that happen. In Hartford, I can make the people who serve, at the pleasure of the mayor, you're going to live in Hartford. And you're going to be as much as is possible from Hartford. Because I've talked to too many people over the last 37 years that are more than qualified to do the work that it takes here in Hartford. I would submit for your consideration that deputy department head and second person down who actually run the department every time a new administration comes in actually know what they're doing. The problem is many times they don't want those people running the ship.
Thank you. Okay. Can I come up here, Andre?
Can you break down the question, please?
The question relates to hiring Hartford residents. What plans do you have to do that?
I think first and foremost, like I said, been a Hartford native. I see a lot of work going on with these construction sites and all the work being done, and half of these companies aren't from here. And I stop these local construction people and ask them, how do I apply? And it's always go online, and most of these companies aren't from here. And another issue is always a waiting list, or a lot of people, as far as taxes, feel like taxes are too high. And another thing I feel is like, for the people that are Hartford residents, are hurt because of past records, or like there's no incentives for people with records. So when you got a city with people that have records, how can they work these jobs when records affect them? So all the jobs are going to the outer city people. I mean, what are legislators doing to help the people that need second chances? So my thing is, like, I don't have a bad background, but it's also hard for me to get a job, and I've lived in Hartford majority of my life. So I mean, it starts with us being here and us getting these jobs. I mean, all these people talk about giving these jobs, but it hasn't happened. I mean, I've lived here all these years. I apply local jobs downtown, construction companies that no longer are here, businesses that pack up and leave because they saying Hartford isn't what it is. So, and that also, yeah, that as well. I mean, it's about who you know. And if you don't know nobody, you ain't get no job. I mean, I've lived here all my life now. I can't even get a city sanitation job. So, I'm trying to figure out what's the problem. I've lived here 30-something years and not have a city job nor a state job, and I'm not a felon. So it starts within us, the legislative, the people, and everybody being involved.
Thank you, sir.
All I have.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Just to piggyback off of that, institutional racism is real. Institutional racism is real, and it's not rocket science. I was a young man. I interned in the mayor's office. Mayor Carrie Saxon Perry told me, be seen, not heard. Sit down, be quiet, and learn. Thurman Milner at the state capitol, sit behind me, sit quiet and learn. If we take our young people and we give them internships and access, even if they're not paid, but we give them access and mentor them and nurture them, they will have the skills, the ability to fill jobs. If we are intentional in doing that, in creating a pipeline, as a strong mayor, I can create a pipeline, period. You project how many people are going to retire, and then how many young people you have to can fill these spots. So what you do is you set plans. You have a plan, you put a plan in place, and you work that plan. But civil rights in our city is something that we need to tackle. It's something that we need to have an upfront, very frank conversation about. Because in order for us to really move the city forward, it's going to take every one of us, black, brown, yellow, purple, and whatever. We need to come together, figure out what we have in common, and work on those things. And I do believe, just for a certain note, that we all should learn Spanish. No, to be quite honest with you, we should all learn Spanish, because that's how you create community. That's how you do it. We disenfranchise our own. We eat our own. And we need to stop doing that. And so, again, I'm a product of being an intern in the mayor's office. I'm a product of people taking the time to groom me, to teach me. And I ran for Board of Education. In the minority side, I became chair, and I learned. And we are intentionally trying to make sure our children have access to not just high-quality education, but business, to internships. And we're doing that. We can do more of that, but we need money, and I'm sure we're going to get to that later in life.
Great, thank you.
So thank you.
2 minutes. Okay.
I have what? I have 31 seconds then.
No, you didn't. I now have a stopwatch. Okay, so my lady over here is competing with my stopwatch. This is why I work. I have a stopwatch, but you can still keep checking. What am I saying now? All of you have mentioned housing in one way or another, so let's get a housing question here. Blighted properties are not available to Hartford residents as a matter of priority, I don't believe.
You're a resident.
Why and what is your plan to make it a requirement that Hartford residents are given priority within the blighted properties market? Can I start here, please, Andre? You.
Can you repeat that?
No. Blighted properties. What plan do you have to make sure that Hartford residents are given priority? It's a housing, abandoned houses is what I'm talking about. Okay, dollar.
I see a lot of, I see a lot of abandoned homes. Yeah, there are a lot in our
Can we listen,
community.
please?
It's a lot
Thank
in our
you.
community that are being overlooked, and I think that residents see the issue that we need to make available. I mean, all these places are just sitting there and, collecting space, and the city is doing nothing about it. If you have no money, you can't do nothing. I mean, I think there should be programs that should allow inner city people to have the opportunity to be homeowners other than outside people coming in, because, I mean, all these people live in Hartford and they're wanting to leave Hartford because there's nothing for Hartford. And if we give incentive or initiative to make Hartford a better place to live in and a better quality of life, then everybody will want to have property to invest in and own property. So it all starts in everybody having a chance to own. I mean, if there is programs set in place, I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, I think there should be more education and there should be more programs for people to have the opportunity to own homes other than outsiders coming in.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. What I would do, I would have a multifaceted approach to it. First and foremost, the blighted problems, the dollar homes, its attractiveness is good because you're paying $1 for it, but then when you have to refurbish it, fix it up, that can run you into the hundreds of thousands. And so again, we have a large group of minority contractors. And so if we incentivize minority contractors, create a fund, apply for grants, and restructure City Hall so we can squeeze some money out to support those minority contractors in rehabbing those blighted homes, and then incentivizing Hartford residents, because some of these homes are worth maybe $80,000. And so a person with a first-time job, 30-year mortgage, can afford an $80,000 home. So it's really just a matter of educating people on, if you invest in Hartford and you take pride in Hartford, you will yield dividends after a while. But really what it is about intentionally creating community by stimulating and supporting small business, the the out of work and uncontracted workers, rehabbing it, hiring more Hartford residents, but making sure that the people that are returning home, that have got the new jobs out in state prisons or state police or whatever the case may be, they can afford new homes. And then you have high school graduate, Hartford graduates that are returning with their master's degrees and they're living on their mother's couch because, again, they can't get a suitable job to move out on their own. So again, we need to support our young people. We need to support each other by creating a market, by creating a system that is reciprocal for us. And that's the only way we're going to get through it. And again, with the trades, it's training our young men and our young women if they want to get trades, if they want to rehab, or if they want to DIY and do it themselves, get some training with some of these minority contractors to rehab. But the city can do so much, and it's about personal desire to want to change.
Thank you.
That was time.
Thank you. No, you're on time. You're good. Member.
So this is a really important question. I think that people assume that the city of Hartford owns a lot of residential property or owns a lot of homes. We don't. And one of the reasons is this. For a long time, when people were behind on their taxes, what the city would do is just sell off the tax liens to some third party. I remember when I was talking with a lot of folks back in 2015, I heard so many stories of people whose tax liens had been sold, and then some company somewhere else owned their tax lien. The city then loses control of it altogether. So we stopped doing that. And instead, when we do have to sometimes enforce where there's a vacant property, they're not paying the taxes, we went to, so it's called a tax deed sale, so that we could either sell it, and we do have to get some money back for it, or take control of it. And once we take control of it, then we have the ability to get it into residents' hands. So we just did this. We just did the sale. It's the first time in many years it's been done. We just did a tax deed sale. We are taking ownership of a number of properties, but there's a 6-month waiting period, so we don't have the keys yet. But when we do, we're working with another thing we just set up, which is called the Land Bank, which can hold these properties and help get them into residents' hands who can help fix them up. The other thing is, we have a lot of homeowners already whose houses are falling apart around them because they don't have the ability to keep them up. We've got a housing department. Brian Matthews, who's here, runs it. There are programs where homeowners can get preservation loan funds, and in some cases down payment assistance too, if you're talking about purchasing. And we need to keep spreading the word about that. So I'd love to talk more about that. The other thing we're trying to do is just create new homeownership opportunities, period. Like just over, behind Parker, Brackett and Old Development, where it's a development that CRDA is a partner of, where it's a bunch of two-family homes where the idea is you own it, but you rent out the other one to help you pay your mortgage down. And we need to continue to push things forward like that. Sounds like I'm out of time, but.
Thank you. Ms. Jacob?
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me make something real clear. I have grandchildren who are Hispanic, and I don't think there's anything wrong with each and every one of us in here who choose to learn Spanish to do so. But I'm a community outreach worker. I volunteer in our community. I knock on doors every day. And I have conversations with individuals in our community who do not feel as though there's a level playing ground. That's what I speak to. As it relates to the blighted properties, listen, I was homeless as a result of my life being threatened back in '09 and my choosing not to sell out and take the money. I ended up losing my job and ended up in the South Park in battered women's shelter and Sarah Mundy shelter. Today, I had an office a block away from the shelters that I once resided in. But at the time when all of that was going on, I may have been the individual who was least knowledgeable about all of the ins and outs that took place that led me in that predicament. The FBI knows what was going on. The Hartford Police Department knew what was going on, and that was on Eddie's shift when all of that went on. We have leaders in our community that know what the solution is, and they also know what the problem is. Pay attention to the individuals up here who did not say they haven't taken the money. Craig?
Hello?
Sorry, we didn't take nothing.
Like I said, pay attention to the individuals who aren't willing to take a lie detector test. Listen, I'm just a regular, ordinary person, single parent from my community who was terrified to put my paper in to run for mayor for the city of Hartford. My purpose for being here is more about exposing what has gotten this dark cloud over our community rather than being the mayor of the city.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Jacob.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Member.
Why don't you repeat the question?
The question is, blighted properties are not available to Hartford residents as a matter of priority. Why? And what is your plan to make it a requirement that Hartford residents are given priority within that blighted properties market?
I've been in the city for since 1969. Since 1979, I've been involved in housing development, all kinds of housing developments. So one of the things I would do with all of the blighted property is connected to the question that was asked before about small minority business contractors, how to connect it to the workforce, city workers, and how to connect it to neighborhood development. And the way I would do that is to do the same thing we've done. Mayor Bronin has mentioned a number of programs. If you go to see when those programs are, they've been in the city for a long time. So what I would do is fix those, make sure that we get those houses, we rehab those houses, and we sell those houses to city and make it an incentive for city employees to buy those houses and do what we do for most of the mortgages. If you live there for 10 or 15 years, we reduce the mortgage 1%, 10% every year until you get rid of the mortgage, the subsidy that we put in the mortgage. And if you have a minority contractor who has a business in the city, I would require him to have 50% of the workforce from the same zip code that that house is in. That challenges everybody to work to the same goal. That's a simple way of dealing with blight and getting the most money out of it. That means that when you create wealth, and you create the wealth by revolving the wealth back in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Representative McGee.
The question is really a loaded question, but it requires a very simple answer. Clearly, many of the programs that we've heard about, many of these folks have been talking about it, clearly we still have a high population of people who are literally homeless or on the brink of losing their homes or their apartments. So we have to figure out how to create opportunities for more low income and affordable housing throughout the city of Hartford. That's number one. Number two, we have great people working on the front lines. We need to provide more staff, okay, that will enforce what these slum landlords are doing throughout this entire city. I'm talking about the people that live in my neighborhood on Bellevue Street, in the former Bellevue Square, Mary Shepherd. Create opportunities for home ownership. Not like in Stowe Village where we said, you know what? We're going to build new houses, y'all. We're going to give you a voucher. Y'all get out. And then guess what? We're going to give you an opportunity to move back. But then when it's time for you to move back, we're going to stiffen up the requirements so that you can't get in. Fortunately, there are some people who live in Old Stowe Village, and I'm so grateful that they're there, but the opportunities aren't there for many of the people that live here. The last piece is making sure that we partner with our Hartford Foundation for Public Giving when we begin talking about those formerly incarcerated to move in our communities. Put them to work. Put them to work and ask them to create these housing opportunities, and we pay them. They could maintain the facilities. They could be the ones to reunify with their families and live in many of these blighted pieces of property throughout this city. And I keep saying lastly, partner with our homeowners. My grandmother, God bless her soul, built a house on Warren Street that I bought out of foreclosure because Mike Reiner was riding around the city purchasing all of the liens in the city of Hartford.
Thank you, Brandon.
Okay? I wish I had more time because I'll talk more about that too. You'll let me talk about it? Okay.
Thank you. The other session. Yes, Mike.
Okay.
Please.
Well, this is, there's a lot of good ideas here, and I like the mayor and also Mr. Perez, Eddie Perez, when he was mayor. They made a lot of attempts to take blighted property and renovate it and turn it over to residents that live in the city. These properties should be, we should try and prevent them from being bought up by people from the suburbs, the so-called white supremacists that come in here and want to buy up everything from the city. And like they did downtown before we finally got a hold of things. I hope we have gotten a hold of things before they'll do that to the whole city. And we'll lose all our resident stock. But we need, the simple answer is affordable housing. And blighted property that's renovated is a perfect example of a possibility of affordable housing. And a lot of these landlords that are not taking care of their property either by not paying the tax, we should foreclose by, the city should take over on foreclosure on properties through taxes and or fines. If a person is not keeping up with fixing up their properties and letting them run down, they should be fined. And they fine them by the day. And the longer they don't renovate or fix up their properties, the more fines they accumulate to the point where they just abandon the property and the city should take it over. And then they should renovate it, make it affordable for the residents.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. McCauley.
Okay. Wow. All right, I'm trying to bring my brain back around to the original question. And I appreciate you as a moderator, but could you please repeat the question?
Yes, blighted properties. The Hartford residents do not have priority to purchase these properties.
Okay.
What is your plan to make it a requirement that Hartford residents are given priority?
So how much blighted property does the city own? If it isn't that much, then there's not much that can be done. Now, in 2011, when I asked this question in front of the town committee at Buckley High School, I had a plan. It had a fancy name. I don't remember the name, but I remember what the plan was. I would give ex-offenders coming back into Hartford the opportunity to work on 2 blighted properties. One could be sold, and those individuals who rehab and sell it would keep the profits. The other one would go to a city employee that lives out of town as an incentive to get them to move into town. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's like the 60-second soundbite version of it. As it relates to properties that are blighted, bigger scale, like some of these slumlord apartments, I talked to a woman just the other day who lives across the street from Horace Bushnell Congregational Homes, and you know, her whole place is blighted. But of course, you can only be a champion fighting blight to a limited degree. We need intentional city inspectors, fully staffed, who can go in and enforce the books, you know, what's on the books in terms of regulations and ordinances for making sure that these houses are livable and that the standard meets that for human occupation. It's totally unacceptable that we have conditions for residents to live in the city. Once again, is there an intent to fix it?
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, let's move to, again, another issue that you've all talked about kind of tangentially. But let's hear something substantive around the business of schools and education. Let's just ask the question. What do you believe is the most critical issue facing the Hartford public school system? Can I start here with Andre and then make my way down?
That's a good question because I lived in Hartford all my life, as I said, and I've not been prepared in the Hartford school systems to have a job. So our schools failed, and also have a child here that is 19, bilingual, has the opportunity to make something of his life, but our school system failed. I mean, because they're not preparing us for these jobs. I mean, we're just going to school, and quote my son said to me, I went to school and I just got by. So that means city officials, city school attendants haven't done their job. So I think all this needs to be shaken up, starting all over, and bring in new ideas, new school programs, because growing up all these years, I felt like I've been robbed for education because I've just gotten by because I just have a job just over broke. That's what jobs mean. So our school systems need better substance, better people to come in and do it all over because we've been failed. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you. I will acknowledge, let me start by saying, no, I'm not taking any money from anyone. I never did. I don't sell out, and you are misinformed about me. And so what we will do what I will do throughout my answer was inform. You can, the streets don't bother me. I'm not scared of those streets. This is what I'm saying right now. What we need to do, our education system has been divided. It's been divided 30 years. We had CHEF, we have local school systems. We have 60% of our kids in failing schools. We have 40% of our kids in well-resourced schools. That needs to change. We need to reconcile that. 1. 2, philosophically, we have not done the job systematically. Since I've been on the board, my 2 years as chair, we were working on curriculum. We were working on the first African American and Latino studies. We did that before the state mandated that. Thurman L. Miller School that's moving on Tower Avenue is going to be an African American social justice school. We're working on that. But more importantly, when you have schools that are under-resourced and you define the diameter of children's experience through miseducation or under-resources or just negative attention, microaggressions, and things of that nature. When the diameter of their experience is defined that way, the circumference of their lives is limited. And we aren't thinking large. We're not thinking big. We're thinking small. Get a job. Here's a theme to get you through so we can look successful. We were not intentionally looking at educating children so they can think for themselves. What education is an intuitive process. It comes from within. You have to know and understand how to think in order to understand how to learn. And that's what we were not doing as a system, and as a community, we don't support it. So we need to do more as a community to support education at home. Turn the Xbox off, read, talk finances with our students, teach them how to study. I'm up. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, President. Thank you. Mayor.
Craig's absolutely right about the two systems. I mean, the truth is, 10, 15 years ago, Hartford went all in on magnet schools. And that created opportunities for some kids, but it also, for a number of years, meant that the city kind of turned its back on neighborhood schools. And a big part of the work that the board and superintendent and others are doing are trying to shift some focus back to neighborhood schools right now. So that's one. Two, the city, again, 10, 15 years ago, stopped caring about the school district's ability to serve our kids with special education needs. And so we send a huge number of kids out of district because we don't have that capacity here. That's something they're working on now, is try to build that here so we can bring our kids back home. But I will tell you, if the question is what's the biggest issue, the biggest issue is that there are far too many kids who aren't even in the schools. Chronic absenteeism is the biggest issue. And it's superintendent and I and the board, and we have identified this as a crisis. And we can't be afraid to talk about problems. We have to shine lights on them. It's a crisis. We have, in certain grades, in the earliest grades and then in high school, we have more than 30% of kids who aren't attending. We're working hard to try to address that. So this summer, we built something called the Summer Bridge Program because we saw a huge drop-off from 8th grade to 9th grade, where a lot more kids were not attending in 9th. So we said we have to create some supports in that transition. And we got some private money. We built the coalition. We are providing a 4-week transition program with a stipend, with free breakfast, free lunch, free transportation, so that we could get those kids, especially those kids who got some early warning indicators that they may be starting to slip in their attendance, so that they can be in that program, so they can start building the relationships with the teachers they're going to be seeing, building relationships with students they're going to be with, getting ready academically, socially, emotionally for that move to high school. There's a lot more to say.
Thank you.
That's
Time. Ms. Jacobs?
What do I believe is the most critical issues facing Hartford schools? I agree with everything that has already been said, but I also believe that we need to also pay more attention to the fact that our children are not safe in our Hartford schools. Not just as it relates to bullying and as it relates to being in, as we would call it, as an environmental specialist, 6 schools. The schools that have already closed down, like Clark Elementary and Martin Luther King, both of which I've had children attend, both of which I've had teachers tell me that not only are the children getting sick, but the teachers are as well. That's serious. The other thing that I am here to stand and speak on is what I'm sure no one else will want to address, and that's the pedophile principals that are allowed to deal with our 13-year-old children, retire with their pension in place. It's in the paper. It's in the paper. It's in the paper. And I read it. Just like I read in another newspaper article, the Connecticut Mirror, that stated that the governor gave the mayor $30 million for Hartford schools, and his response to that was, I'm not going to use it on Hartford schools, I'm going to use it on investments. Somebody needs to be willing to speak to the issues as it relates to our educational system that no one wants to talk about. That's the only way we're going to get to any solutions, is if we begin to talk about the issues that no one wants to speak about.
Thank you. Mayor Perez.
Do as I do, not as I say. One of the biggest problems we have in the school system is leadership and accountability. Leadership and accountability. It doesn't matter the plan you have, whether it's charter school, magnet schools, neighborhood schools. It just means that you have to immerse yourself in the day-to-day operation of the school as a leader, not as a superintendent, not as the principal, not as the teachers or the parents or the security guard, but as a leader of this city. Currently, and the last administration, we just set the schools aside and it becomes somebody else's problem. When I was mayor, it was my problem and I had to look for solutions. I had to make solutions happen. And that's what's happening with the city now. On the other extreme is that there's not enough work being done to engage parents and assist parents in whatever the system is. Parents usually know what's best for their kids. What they may not know is how to maneuver this complicated thing called education. Parents are in special education, need advocates. Parents who are in high-end magnet schools need advocates. And the mayor of the city of Hartford should be the #1 advocate for each child in Hartford. Now, I went over and became the chairman of the school board temporarily when I thought it was needed. As soon as I found capable leadership and a superintendent that was moving the ball forward, I went to other priorities. But I can tell you, you can't leave the schools onto themselves and get a report once a year during the budget time.
Thank you.
And ask people to cut the budget and still expect them to do more.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that we're faced with here is not having a leader that serves on the Board of Education. So as your mayor, I would serve on the Board of Education. That also requires courageous and transformative leadership to address some of the systemic barriers and challenges and inequalities our kids have faced, from environmental to technology, you name it. If you ever have gone into some of these classrooms where our babies are sitting in, you would probably just walk away. It's a mess. The other piece is, I would do my best to uplift the voices of so many parents, those of you in this room, that have been fighting for your children, only to be faced with a door shut in your face. So we have to stop saying that there aren't parents engaged. There are parents in the city of Hartford and some of the communities that some of us don't even go into. They're advocating for their children. Homelessness is real. Couch surfing is real. All of that is real, and we have to work alongside those groups that are supporting our young people. Everything else will fall in place.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, we have magnet schools, neighborhood schools, schools in suburbs, all of which cost us a lot of money in busing. We pay for busing. We send students to the suburbs for an education. That's a good thing. It's good for integration. But we have to pay for the busing. We also have to pay the towns, the schools that the children go to from Hartford for their education. And we have to pay for the busing from the neighborhoods to the magnet schools. And then the neighborhood schools have suffered. Now we have also taken away things such as vocational technical education, family consumer science, culinary, social work, special education, art, music, library, physical education, guidance counseling, extracurricular activities, all from our high schools and our middle schools. Oh, we also got rid of our middle school system. So now we don't have it. We're trying to get our middle school system back. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't see any vocational technical education coming into it, or family consumer science, or any extracurricular activities. There's certainly none in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade now. This all has to come back. This is done in the name of saving money. Well, if we save money, then we should have plenty of money. But somehow we don't have any money at all. So where's the money gone? Who has the money? Another thing that we have to address, school system, is we have to encourage African American and Puerto Rican males to become certified teachers in our school system. There are several substitute teachers, several in my union that are interested in becoming certified teachers, and they're not giving encouragement. They're being discouraged from becoming certified teachers. We have to encourage people to do that.
Time. Staff, may we hear from you, please?
Okay. I'm usually better at managing my calm. But I find this to be exceedingly frustrating. You know, go to McCauleyformayor.com. My #1 priority is education and youth development, and there's a very, very well thought out plan as it relates to our schools. I would not sit on the Board of Education. There is a firewall that is purposely put there by the Department of Education because it is the State Department of Education responsibility to teach and educate the students here in Connecticut. We have an education department that we are responsible for as a city. I think that the #1 problem, having seen Board of Education meetings from Nora Wyatt fainting at High Street to water being thrown, I've covered meetings ad nauseum. I've seen people faint, cry, protest, state come in, EAI, I go on and on and on. The #1 problem facing this city is we do not have a unified, citywide approach to prioritize education and make it #1 for our children. My greatest fear is that after I become mayor, there will be a rally cry to reinvent the wheel that so many people have been trying to get right over the last couple of months. Way before this current superintendent, there was a superintendent that brought a plan in. After the plan was ratified and moved forward, people came out of the woodwork that I ain't never seen at a Board of Education meeting complaining about the plan. The mayor has to take the bull by the horns and provide the leadership and be the champion citywide, bringing everybody on board to make our children the #1 priority in this city. Period. You vote for me, and that'll change.
Okay, please stay standing, Mr. McCauley. What I'd like to do now is to go through specific questions to specific people, and I'm conscious of the time, so we're going to open the floor up following this to questions from the audience. Okay? So, Mr. McCauley. Now, you have run for mayor multiple times and switched parties multiple times. Now, why should the residents of Hartford view you as a viable mayoral candidate this time around?
That's a great question, and it's a fair one. In 2007, the Republicans in this city took a chance and gave me an opportunity to run. It has been since 2008 that I have been a Democrat. I don't know why people don't know that, particularly those who claim to be astute politically in this city. I ran for town committee in the last town committee elections against the town chair, Mark DeBella, and his slate. Okay? I have helped Democrats throughout the city give voice. The reason you should take me seriously this time is because I have a very formidable team that is concentrated on listening to you. The first 2 times I ran, I was the guy with the master plan. And that's the problem. It ain't about us. It's about you. And I'm listening to the citizens of this city and why they want a leader who's going to listen to them. You hear this over and over again. You guys have visions, you have aspirations, wants, dreams, desires. You know what you need in your community. Whether it's a trolley car that might sound simple to some, or whether it's, what Brother Mark wants to do in terms of, harm reduction. People have ideas. No one listens to them. So you need someone who's going to run for office, who's going to have the audacity to tell you to leave the plantation of party politics.
Thank you.
And free your political mind.
Thank you. This next question goes to Representative McGee. Now, you apparently have a reputation for being unresponsive to communications from your constituents. Now, this apparently is what has been said by some people within the community. Now, how can you convince the people of Hartford that you will be more responsive, assuming that that commentary has some validity, should you become the mayor of the city?
Well, I appreciate that, and everyone is entitled to what they feel and how they feel. But one of the things that I would do better, because I'm not going to say that I'm the greatest at all, before I answer that, I want everyone to know that as a state representative, it is a part-time job with full-time hours, number one. Number two, we're required to work full-time jobs as well, so I do that. But I make no excuse. So to anybody who has not received the calls from Brandon McGee or my office, please accept my apologies. But one of the things that I would do, utilizing the resources available to me, is to have staff and individuals that would help to support me in responding to the needs of our citizens and residents in this city. I would hope that one failed respond to whoever it is or a couple of people does not prevent you from supporting me, prevent you from not remembering all of the things that I've done for North Hartford with respect to jobs, financial assistance, helping individuals with their records and expungement, and doing all of those things that I'm not going on Facebook saying, oh, look what I've done. So hopefully I'll have your support and work alongside each and every one of you to help me be that person, that mayor that responds to every citizen in this city.
Thank you very much for that response. Now, Mr. Stallings, the people of the city of Hartford know you as the former chair of the Board of Education. How would your leadership as mayor be any different from your leadership, if in fact it would be, when you were chair of the Board of Ed?
It would actually probably be somewhat of the same. I was a hands-on chair in the sense that I made sure that I truly understood the budget down to the penny. I made sure that we were innovative and we were trained. So I would make sure that I had professional development for staff. I would make sure that I had a working knowledge of the budget throughout the year. We restructured the school system, and the plan of restructure is being implemented, but we studied it first. So I would be intentional in studying the city, studying how we can generate more revenue, how we can improve. So I would take a more academic approach. I would be very open. I would be around the city, hands-on. I would probably stream live most of the times. And I would host a lot of people at City Hall. I would work with people. I would work with college students. I would work with high school students. And I believe that a strong mayor should put in maybe 80 hours a week. So that is being a workaholic, which I've been. And so that's what I would do. As chair, was a workaholic. And again, I think that we have some strong problems. We have long-term problems. We have systemic problems that we have to get through. But we have to recognize that they weren't created overnight, and they're not going to be fixed overnight.
Thank you. Thank you. Now to Mayor Bronin. We were talking about education a moment ago, and this is an issue that I know that you get asked more often than not. Your children are enrolled in West Hartford schools. Why? In addition, give them an opportunity to respond. In addition, your wife is the chair of the Planning and Zoning Board. Now, is this a conflict of interest or no? Do you see it as such?
Do you want extra time for 2 questions?
No, you don't.
My kids are not in West Hartford schools. They go to the Montessori School of Greater Hartford.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I believe in Montessori education. We tried to get our kids into Annie Fisher Montessori. We got one of them in with the promise that we'd have sibling preference. We then couldn't get the others in, and we ended up having them all at the Montessori School of Greater Hartford. I will say, after I got elected, I decided not to go after the magnet lottery because, number one, I didn't want people thinking that I gamed the system to get my own kids in. So I will confess, it's one of those situations where you feel like it's kind of, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, and you try to do the best for your kids. And I hope that everybody can understand that. With respect to my wife, she is the chair of planning and zoning. I think she's a pretty good one. She was appointed by my predecessor, Pedro Segarra, because she is a national expert in land use law and planning and zoning. She's a professor. That's true. She's a professor at the University of Connecticut Law School, where this is her specialty. And she has also put the city on the forefront of innovative zoning codes. It's getting national attention for the work that she's done. So I'm very proud of the work that she does. It's not a conflict of interest at all. If you know her, you know she's a very independent-minded woman, and she's going to do what she thinks is right. But I also think she's done a great job at it.
Thank you very much. Mayor Perez, now, you know, the city knows you. We know you. So ultimately, what is your motivation for running to become mayor of the city of Hartford? Is it associated in any way with, let's say, your pension? Or is it associated in any way with the fact that you may want to work in the city of Hartford? And how can you assuage the Hartford population that they would not be at risk of another scandal? He has 2 minutes, regardless of where he goes. Go on. Yeah, go on.
Listen, I'm running for the city because I love the city. I arrived here with my mom on Bellevue Street. I've helped raise my 8 siblings on welfare. I found God at Sacred Heart Church. I was a ghetto brother. But let me tell you, none of that makes me feel that I shouldn't try one more time. Because of that, I think I could do better this time than I did last time. Because when you find yourself in the worst day of your life, and you have to get up. You have to get up once for 10 every day, 365 days a year for 10 years, and face your children, your wife. When the darkest day of my life, my minister was with me in my living room, and we were talking about how I would get through my arrest. My grandson, Noah, was just a year old. He walked into the living room where we were having the conversation. And my minister said, Eddie, this is very simple. It's very simple. What are you going to tell Noah? What are you going to tell Noah? Noah had just started walking. The day I decided this...
I'm sorry.
Give me time.
You can certainly continue.
I'm going to be
during the question, not now, during the question.
Can I continue, people?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. Then we go ahead.
Thank you. The question was asked.
If that's the case, it'd be a double thing.
I told
together as a duet.
Mayor Perez, hold a second. Let me speak to the audience for a minute. Listen to me, folks. Just listen for a moment. Listen. At the end of the day, If what you're saying is you don't want to hear what he has to say at this time, because you believe it prejudices the other people on the panel, and somehow if they don't get to speak in the same way he's speaking,
It's not fair.
hold a moment, they don't get an opportunity to somehow get the votes of the people of Hartford. This is not the case. If we were to put it out here to the audience, and the audience agree, then yes, he could have the 1 minute, because it would only be 1 minute. But hold a moment. What I'm trying to do here is this, because we're at 9 o'clock. What I'm trying to do is to give the audience time to ask questions. You see what I'm saying? So this is why I said.
Listen, if you want to know what I told Noah, stay around after the meeting. I'll talk to you.
Okay, good, fine. So he's taken the position that I wanted him to take. So what I'm going to do now is to ask those of you with questions to stand at that microphone. When I see a microphone in there, somebody needs to put one in there for me. Please, a microphone. If you have a question, stand up.
Do you have a question for Ms. Jacobs?
No, I do not. We're done.
You're done?
No, I'm done. So, could you put a microphone in there for me, please? So
I
now,
don't understand that. I don't understand it. Explain it.
let me say this. Let me say this.
Yeah, say it.
Hold a second. Let me say this. Hold a second. I do not have a question for Ms. Jacobs. If I had a question, I would ask her. I don't. Period.
All right.
Period. That's it. It's done. It's over. We're moving now to the question and answer session. Okay? If you have a question for her, feel free to ask her. Okay? All right. Good. And Carl, do you have something?
I'll let it go in front of me if she likes.
Hold on. No. What I'm saying is, do you have a question for her?
Yeah.
So you're going to go and, okay, good. Thank you. So let's hear the questions. Could you all kind of get to writing? Because this, again, is you responding. It's nothing to do with me. And could you say your name, say where you're from, where you live in the city, and so on?
Do we all answer the question?
No, you do not all answer the questions. The questions are not going to be answered by everybody. The question can be taken by any of the panel members. All right? So
Person can ask for the person.
you can say specifically who you're speaking to, who you'd like to ask the question.
Well, I would be speaking.
Okay.
I would be speaking to all of them.
That's fine. You're allowed to do that. Go on.
Well, my name is L. Fitzgerald Lester. They call me G. Liebert Lester. I'm the owner of It's a G Things Barber Salon. And I don't know if any of you saw the program, well, not the program, but Fox News did a story. I'm a barber. And I was able to change my life through barbering, and I like what Mike was saying about, we need skills in the city. I have 2 college degrees, but I chose to do barbering because that's what I wanted to do. But the question is that I would ask you guys is, when I built my facility, there were a lot of people in the city that were fighting against me. It was blighted property. I acquired the property, and Bruno Mazzullo, Gus Espinosa, all of those guys who were within the city, they were against me doing the development. And so I went through a lot of things.
Right.
And so because I live on top of the barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we're trying to work things out, but we've been together since high school. You're almost 50, so you know how that goes. But I live in my barbershop. And, a lot of people say, oh, I had issues with the police and they see me around, but at the time building the barbershop, I was about to lose the loan, and I had access to Mayor Perez. He had Lee Erdman bring a letter to me 10:30 at night to my old barber salon so I could fax it into the bank in New Jersey to keep my revenue, because there were individuals in the city who were blocking the documents that I needed so that I could build in the city, because they didn't feel that I was the right person to be developing. So I'm asking you guys, what are you going to do to truly allow the individuals in the city to be in a position so that we don't have to go through those things, that when we position ourselves to grow?
Got it. Thank you.
Gee, you know what? Oftentimes, when I'm speaking to individuals in our community, they respect the fact that I put my hat in the race to run because I know the pain that we endure every day as it relates to experiences such as yours. oftentimes the individuals who are blocking us from doing the things that are necessary to move forward are those individuals who do not know the pain. When you have suffered in the way most of us have suffered, when you have looked in the eyes of each and every citizen in the city of Hartford and know the pain, you are less likely to block anyone from trying to move forward. Each one teach one. That's what I see you do in your shop. You bring the young people in and encourage them to go into entrepreneurship and do something positive with their lives. Right now, we have young people who are graduating from our high schools, by the grace of God, getting into college, graduating with college degrees, and can't get jobs in our city. They're being blocked by other individuals who are able to come in our community, who are not from here, because why? If you work for a Hartford school system, what, you get your college education, loans wiped clean because you work in an urban school? We have to do better. Our young people are leaving Hartford, and anyone who is in a position such as you to encourage those dudes that are on the streets to come into your shop, to go into barbering so that they don't have to sling dope or bricks up against the penitentiary, we should be encouraging you. We should be doing everything in our power to ensure that you succeed and others like you succeed.
Thank you. Got it.
What I even get them to buy the clippers to train the guys from the.
Hello, Craig, before you start. We're not going to have a discussion in that kind of way. In that, if we do that, the 3 or 4 people behind you would not then be able to speak. I hear your question, understand it. We have 8 people on the panel. Several of them may want to respond. Okay? Craig, say what you're saying, and then after you, I'm going to take 3 questions and then 3 more.
Thank you for your question. I would babysit, hold their hand, keep them hostage in the mayor's office. Meaning, if we are developing in North Hartford and the department and the individuals you're talking about refer to Hartford as a black hole. So one, that's not acceptable. If they refer to Hartford as black hole and they refer to segments of Hartford as black hole, they shouldn't work for Hartford. So that's 1. 2, I would intentionally monitor the project, keep close reins on it, and have a consistent report from those individuals to my office to make sure that what you are experiencing and what they're telling you is accurate. And again, as chairman of the board, I find myself having to do that quite a bit. So there's 2 sides to every story, but what you have to do as mayor is make sure that you're in a fair position to make sure that your staff is doing what they're supposed to do and the needs of the individual businesses are being met. And I just wanted, for the record, I'm one of those street dudes that G used to cut his hair, and G encouraged me to go into politics and business. So I thank you for that, and you're part of the reason why I'm sitting here running, because there are long-term issues. You've been fighting for that shop since I was in high school. So I'm here to bear witness to that.
Thank you, Craig. Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to, one of the reasons if you think I look good tonight, I look good because I was at G's barbershop on Saturday.
Okay.
Mike, there's not much to do, Mike.
Well, the guy said, what do you want to do? I said, just cut it all off. He says, well, it's all off the top. But we have to, when G told me this story, I couldn't quite believe what the things that the blacks that he ran into. And we have to encourage people in the city and not discourage them. And that's a way of discouraging them. And you have to stop people. As I say, there's white supremacists from the suburbs. They come in here and they want to buy up everything and start every business they can and make every bit of money they can and run.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Mr. McCauley. Oh, I saw Stan before I saw you, Mr. McCauley. You can follow.
Intentional. Bottom line. Is there a desire to see you succeed?
Right.
I don't find it hard to believe that this stop and block went on, because that's part of the game here in the city. We all know it happens. And until you get somebody who is sincerely interested in the best interest of the young entrepreneurs who take risk, put it all on the line, go in deep for hundreds of thousands of dollars, risk personal fortune and life and limb to see a dream come to pass. Until you elect people who are in it with you, you can expect stop and block from another group of people.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is to take the next three questions.
I just want to respond.
Oh, I'm
to
sorry,
Yeah.
Brandon, go on.
G, thank you. I think you were the first brother that I've known from the streets that actually went to Morehouse, graduated, came back, and have given back to this community. But the reality is we failed you. You literally came with the plan. You came with the resources. All you needed was additional dollars to make the program work. One of the things that we will do under my administration is provide the resources necessary to help our young people, because you're doing it now without the help, at the expense of losing everything, literally, but helping and giving back to this community. So thank you publicly, but just know that we didn't do a good job supporting businesses like you in this city, and we plan to.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, so I'm going to take the next three questions. Panel members, please listen very carefully and take whatever notes you need to, because I want to allow as many people as possible to ask questions. Okay? So say your name, say where you are from, and ask your question.
And thank you for doing a great job tonight, by the way.
You're welcome.
My name is Alyssa Peterson. I'm very appreciative of the event tonight and that we're here to talk about the state of Black Hartford, because that was the title. Black Hartford is not represented in I have concerns on our town committee. And Mr. Stallings, you were brave enough to mention it earlier. Our Democratic Town Committee is basically a white power structure, but there are more blacks on it than Hispanics or whites together. So my question for the black candidates up here primarily is, the blacks on the Democratic Town Committee have given Mr. Perez an opportunity, and they've given Mr. Bronin an opportunity previously. And when Mr. Bronin came, and by the way, I do like our mayor, I'm just not a fan of his administration. But Mr. Bronin was a library board member for 2 years. That was his qualification. I've gone to city council for 25 years, and I never saw him there once before he ran for office.
So your question is?
Thank you, ma'am. So my question is, we now have historically the most qualified black candidate in the history of Hartford since we changed our charter system, 75 years. A state representative with 7 years. He's the head of a caucus citywide, and he runs the housing committee. I want to know, why is Black Hartford concerned about whether he calls them back, or is Black Hartford on the town committee going to give the most historically qualified candidate an opportunity to run on the Democratic Town Committee?
Thank you for your question. Next.
That would be Stan.
No, that's not Stan.
I'm not mentioning
Brandon McGee.
Stan, this is what I'm doing. I'm having three questions to come at you. You do not all have to respond to each question, only if you feel you have a need to. You know, like the mayor a moment ago wanted to respond to Mr. G, but he changed his mind, right? So let me know that. So let's have behind you Councilman Jennings.
Why don't they go and apply for it?
Why don't you get quiet?
Everybody,
hello.
why don't they go and apply for the position?
I'm sorry.
They can't get up and go do it. Nobody.
Be quiet.
Excuse me. You can do that.
You tell them,
First of all, I'd like to have. Hold on a second.
Put him out. Okay, you go out. Go out. Get out.
Every black person is coming. Stop making excuses. No, you shut up. I'm not just
Okay.
Where's the Hartford policeman?
One of the things that I'd like to ask is.
2 years in the library. You don't know what you're talking about.
I'd
did was, in terms of double dipping in this city is supposed to be poor. Today, I guess it came out in the Current that we are the 9th most poorly operated managed city in the country, the 9th. My question is, first of all, if you are going to run a city that's poor, how do you pay $300,000 a year to a police chief? And how do you allow double dipping where people retire from the city that aren't necessarily from the city, come back and earn additional salaries?
Right.
And why can we not come together with our legislators and have the legislature pay the city the payment in lieu of taxes that they owe us, which is $50 million a year over 15 years? Minimum, they owe us $550 million. Why are we now a ward of the state, and why have we had a state takeover when we had a mayor through 911, through the national housing crisis, and through the international stock market crash that never gave the city up in terms of being a ward of the state of Connecticut? When these mayors leave here, or when this mayor leaves here, we will still be a ward of the state of Connecticut, and there will be 3 people from Greenwich that are now running our city. Please tell me what you plan to do to get us out of this takeover, and tell me why we were in it in the first place. Thank you.
Yeah. Next person.
My name is Johnny Thompson. I'm Andre Thompson's son. I came up here to say that I didn't see my dad at his worst. I didn't see him struggle, but he's always been there for me. Like, I didn't got incarcerated, and when I came out, he pointed me in the right direction. He said I got to go to college. So we both went. We applied to college. We had to do what we had to do. And now I start at Capital Community College. But I came up here to ask my dad a question. This is the same reason why we've been staying up all night, and every couple nights, and he's been talking about being a mayor, what he wants to change, things he wants to do, how he wants to better himself in life. So my question is to you. Well, I already know, but I want you to tell the people why you chose to be mayor, and what made you want to run and change for the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, maybe I'll give Carl the opportunity to speak so he can sit down. Thank you very much. Thank you. Carl, why don't you answer?
Thank you. My name is Carl Hodrick. I've been in the city all my life. I was born here. My mother was born here. Her mother was born here. So I'm truly a Hartford person. I want to really focus on education, but I do want to speak to Gigi as the person that I know that's taking on young people that no one else wants. She's taken on 2 twins in the city that have caused havoc in the city, who runs up in hotels with guns, and she has taken on the people. So I'm saying to you, Gigi, you don't have to put anybody down. Just be yourself, because the things that you do, people know in the street, and they also know in the suites. I do want to say this in terms of, I was proud of Brandon getting a 3% education, but then I was disappointed when I found out that it didn't go into the public school system. So my question to you, Brandon, is how is it that Craig got 3%, 5% salary, and the public school system didn't get it? What happened? And I want to say to all you, if we don't educate, then they're going to incarcerate.
Thank you.
Lou, great job with the Youth Service Corps. You made a difference in their life. Because if you didn't, the streets would be shot up.
Thank you.
They're shot up. Everybody ain't dying.
Okay, Carl, thank you. So we have...
You ain't interrupted me,
Thank you. I know you're done. Okay, so hold on. Can we have responses from the panel? Thank you.
See if I can remember these. All right, it's the mic. Okay. You have the government you deserve because you voted for the government that's now in place. We have to get out of this attitude of Anybody but Carrie, anybody but Mayor Mike, anybody but Eddie, anybody but Pedro, now anybody but Luke. We can't continue down that road, all right? Who is the most qualified individual up here to receive the party's nomination? Who is the most electable for the party? I'm trying to get you all to divorce yourself from the plantation of party politics. I don't care whether it's Democrat or Republican. They're the reason that we're in the mess we're in right now, and we have the clown in chief at the it's sitting down there at what is it, 1200 Pennsylvania Avenue? 1600. There we go. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. All right, you have to vote purposely. I'm glad there's a lot of people up here, and I'll say it plainly for the mic and everybody else. I'm glad there's several black candidates up here. Because Black Hartford deserves to choose who it wants to be its mayoral candidate. Okay? The town committee can do its job, and if the town committee feels they want to vote for somebody else, that's their prerogative. I'm not seeking the town committee's endorsement. Because I'm not running for the machine. We're not going to split the black vote. We're going to split the machine vote. Let's be real about this as people roll out seniors from the senior center who have already a captive audience in terms of how many votes they have. Okay? If you want to talk about real leadership, you want to talk about governance in this city, then people have to be responsible. This is your government. This is the reflection of your government. I said this to the mayor sitting at Ashley's. No disrespect to him. You want to see the state of Black Hartford? He's sitting right there. You all put him in. You have an opportunity. The town committee didn't put him in. The Hartford citizens put him in. Okay? Because the town committee can nominate somebody, but it is the party. There are 49,000 Democrats, of which I am one. And so, when will we get up and vote, not because somebody is black or Latino or white, but because they have the best interest of Hartford at heart? And when we start thinking that way, it'll be acted out. And until then, you have the government you deserve. I'm glad that young man is running, because his son is the reason that we're all in this room. And until we start seeing him and valuing him and all the other children in this city, we're all doomed. He's our future. And we're in here playing politics. It's unacceptable at any level. And it's time for us to man up. We need leadership that's willing to take the bullet. That's what leadership is. And we need people to step up to the plate on every level. Town committee, everywhere. People need to step up to the plate. You have plenty of qualified people up here. Every last person up here is qualified. Because they're citizens of the United States and they have a desire to run.
Thank you, Stan.
Let me quickly jump up and say the same thing. I'm going to take no ditto, but I'm going to talk about the double dip.
Oh, I see.
Thanks. Ditto. And we have the government we elected because we fall for hope, and we vote for hope, and we're not educated consumers. We do not understand what the plans have been. The double dipping is another reason and another way and another mechanism of control. The current chief right now, if you stop and you do your research, because I've been doing some research, and this chief is not qualified and not deserving of being active chief at all. At all. And if the work was done to be vetted, if the actual work, the responsibility of the mayor's office and the government is to do the work, and it's not being done. When you think about our lawsuits and the exposures that we have, it's because we're not doing the work. We have a lawsuit by an officer who alleged discrimination, hostile work environment. The current chief was a part in leading that division. Recruitment, he led that division. Then he was transferred to IAD, where the accusation and the investigation went to. And he was in charge of IAD. And if the investigation was botched, it's because we don't have intentional management and leadership. This man does not deserve to be chief. He was not publicly vetted. There was no public hearing. And we can't continue to do business like this. The last chief, Rosado, there was no public hearing. There was just a citywide, let's roll them out. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. But what we need to do is we need leadership. We need to work together. This double dipping is going to drain the budget. And the last thing I'm going to say is if that center plan lawsuit fails, that $90 million lawsuit fails, that double dip is going to hurt.
Thank you. Brandon?
Yes, and so for your education question, Brother Carl, first of all, there's no secret. I've worked at Capital Region Education Council for the past 5.5 years. I also live on Warren Street right here in this city where many of the children, including my family and myself, attended public schools in this city. Annie Fisher, Prince Tech, I was there. Part of Project Concern, went to school in Canton, didn't work out for me, and came back home to where everything did work for me. I also serve on the education committee, not the chairperson. And so oftentimes when you're negotiating, and let's keep this in mind, there was actually no increase for public schools until we started fighting for it. And we asked for the max. And I give a lot of credit to all of the Hartford parents who came out and demanded the change. When we submitted the increase, we found out at the very end that they didn't give us the increase that we asked for. So now we have to hold our leadership accountable, but most importantly, we got to put more pressure on them. So there's politics at the state level as well that we have to fight, okay? And when you talk about institutionalized racism on the local level, just imagine trying to convince 150 plus individuals to support our city around education. And I'll continue to fight for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Unless I have other people. Okay, Mike, go on.
I just wanted to address Cynthia's question. It's my opinion that if in the future we have a chance to change the oversight committee, get rid of the oversight committee, and go back into a bankruptcy and file for bankruptcy, bankruptcy judge then controls, and that's a federal judge. And the first thing it would do is find out how much is owed the city. And one of the things would be the pilot or the payment in lieu of taxes from the state. And they owe us probably $550 million, which is close to the amount of our indebtedness. And also the fact that we also need a commuter tax. As long as we're going to allow people to come into our city and work and go back home and take their money and run, at least they should pay for it.
Really quickly, I know the mayor is going, but before we keep talking about bankruptcy, you all have to understand context, okay? The reason why we didn't file for bankruptcy is because we didn't want to harm those who have pensions in our city. And there's quite a few of folks who work for this city, work their lives in this city, and we needed to protect them. So keep that in mind, and we can further talk about bankruptcy and why it was not a good idea to file.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Rollins.
So there's obviously a bunch of stuff that we're talking about, and I don't think I can get to all of it, but let's start with this one. 3.5 years ago, our city was not in bankruptcy, but it was bankrupt. We had far more debt than we can handle. We had expenses that were here and revenue that was here. And so for the first time in decades, we were honest about it. We said, here's what we face, and here are the ways we can deal with it. And let's do it seriously. Let's not just raise taxes again and again and again so we drive out every single small business in the city, right? Let's not just delay some debt payments again so it's the next mayor's problem, right? Let's not just borrow some more money so that it's the next generation's problem. We went out and we fought, and we worked together with our unions. We got our companies, our big corporations to put some money in. We got the state to step up. We had a lot of legislators, suburban legislators, Republican legislators, didn't want to have anything to do with that, but we went out and made the case that Connecticut needs a strong city, and they deserved a different kind of partnership. All of that, by the way, The state's partnership was about $550 million. They took on all of our debt responsibility. And they didn't take over the city. But they do get to look at our books. And that's okay with me. That's okay with me. I'll tell you exactly what, if I give enough time, I'll tell you exactly what the deal is. They get to, here's what they get. We got all of our debt paid for by the state forever. What they get is they get to approve our assumption about how much money's coming from the state. They get to approve our assumption about what percentage of our tax revenue we're actually going to collect. And when there are 100 contracts of $100,000 or more, and by the way, there are very, very few of those, they get to comment on them. So that's the authority that they get. No, they don't. They get to. When you say comment, what do you mean? No, hold so, for example, if we're contracting with a consultant to do some work, and it's more than $100,000, then they get to approve it. But we hardly ever do that. So there's, I think, been a handful. I can't say the number off the top of my head. There's been a handful of things that actually had to go through before that board for that reason. But the other thing they do is we send them every month financial reports. And not only do I not have a problem with that, I think that's good for us to have the discipline. Frankly, I wish that past mayors had had that discipline of having someone look at what was going on. I think we'd be in a better place right now.
Okay, thank you.
But I have to answer one other thing. I think Stan said it beautifully. We are all doing this ultimately for the reasons that you talked about and for the reasons your dad is doing this. And we had to fight the financial fight, but that's not why I'm doing this, and that's not what we want to do. The things that I'm most proud of are things like building the reentry center inside City Hall, so that finally we have a place where folks who are coming back from incarceration have a place to go, not where all their problems are going to get solved, but where at least there are caring people with some knowledge about how to navigate housing and education and second chance employment.
Okay, Mayor Broden, thank you.
Youth Service Corps, which has put hundreds of kids to work. I would love to have more time to talk about it.
Thank you. Okay, next three questions. Randall, I saw you.
Can you respond to his son? Can you respond to his son?
I'm sorry?
Can you respond to his son?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Hold on. I didn't see you.
I'm Andre Thompson, and I brought my son along to understand the reason why I decided to run, because I got tired of being tired. Everybody always talking about change. Everybody want to change, but ain't stepping up and making the change. I told my son, anything you do, I challenge you. He went to school, he finished. He went to college, I'm there. He was playing semi-football, I'm there. So it's not about just talking about it, it's being about it. And everybody up here, I got respect for, because everybody's up here fighting this fight. But my thing is, I've been here, and everybody say the same thing. I had these jobs. Everybody's in these jobs, and ain't doing nothing. That's my opinion. I'm not knocking nobody, but it's my opinion. I go to child support court, I'm still paying for him. Like, everybody's talking about this and talking about that. I'm in these streets at night. I don't see nobody. I'm in child support court. I'm in programs that don't exist. Yo, Hartford, our piece of the pie. Chrysler should have just don't got no funding no more. And everybody talking about money? We got a Yargo Stadium. For what? The Whalers gone. For what? We have potential, and ain't nobody standing up here doing nothing but talking. So the reason why I want to be mayor, you don't have to have no credentials. You got to want to be here and fight for these people. That's why I'm here. So it ain't about no title. It's about change. And if we ain't going to change, we ain't going to have nothing. So anybody going to keep talking, do something. That's why I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Perez, did I see your hand? No.
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working.
Look, this is called an election. And we're electing the leader of the city for the next 4 years. We should be electing the person who's most qualified to take on the challenges of each and every neighborhood and make it better for as most people as he can during those 4 years. There's not going to be a solution to everything. And I know Brandon's not running to be a black mayor. I'm not running to be a Puerto Rican mayor. Okay? I'm running to be, like I did the last time, to be the mayor of the city of Hartford. A privilege that we all of us want. I'm running, and I hope you would remember the work I did in North Hartford, in South Hartford, in downtown, throughout the city. And I hope you remember that the work is important work that we all need to do.
Thank you, Mayor.
I work at CREC.
Thank you.
But I have nothing to do with the budget at CREC.
Mayor Perez.
It gets spent.
Mayor Perez, thank you.
You had 3 questions.
I hear you.
Thank you very
But
much.
let me tell you what I'm going to do, and I'll come to you, Giselle. I see 3 or 4 people standing up. Could you stand up so I can see what I'm looking at in terms of questions? Okay. Line up behind the mic so I can actually see that I have people wanting to ask questions. All right? Okay. I'll take your question, Randall. And the rest of you, feel free to answer one.
Good evening, everyone. I think all of you, no matter who wins, this was very, very interesting. I learned a lot this evening. I'm a native of Hartford. My name is Randall McCauley. Mayor Perez, you've been the former mayor for 10 years. Simple question, 3 questions. Your greatest achievements that benefited Black people in the community. I'll sit down.
Before you answer, let me take next person in line. Say your name.
Hello.
Say your name.
Well, Raquel Calderon, and this question is usually directed to Mr. Stallings. Mr. Stallings, you know that I work for the Borough of Education. And you heard me many times in the public hearings complaining the way it was running, and it was not safe. And I asked the Board of Directors to call me to come and have a meeting with us. Have you ever tried to do that? Did you solve any of our problems? I talk about discrimination and everything. And do you really think you did a good job? Are you the one who extended the contract for 1 year to the superintendent? And are you the one who was supporting everything that was going there and not saying anything? And when I also told you that DCF was involved after and out, and the parents were blaming the teachers. Did you do something about it? Did you ever get back to me? And I was talking about discrimination.
One moment.
Karen Taylor, North End resident, Stowe Village, also a member of the Hartford Board of Education, former CREC council member. I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit. I think that most of you all know my spin is kind of like school integration stuff and quality education. But since we're talking about the state of Black Hartford, I want to ask a question about what initiatives are in the pipeline for the Caribbean community. Considering that we have a lot of things happening on the national front in terms of immigration, there are a lot of immigrants here in the city of Hartford, many of them undocumented, who do not typically look like Latinx folks who are undocumented in the city of Hartford. And I want to know, kind of floor to ceiling, what are we doing to protect people who are undocumented of all races and ethnicities, and what initiatives do we have to support Caribbean Americans in this community? Hartford is one of the 3rd largest Caribbean populations in the United States. It's New York, Miami, Hartford in terms of like greater urban areas. So West Indian Social Club, I just picked my daughter up from dance practice. It's in condition that needs repair. What sorts of things are you all thinking about in terms of Black Hartford, since a lot of our community is Caribbean American?
Thank you. That was 3 set of questions. I'll come to the next 3 people after I get a response from the panel. Wait.
Yep, let me go first. First, I was not chairman of the board when the whole Eddie Hanel sex thing happened. And so, no, if you responded to the board in regards of that, you did not respond to me. And the superintendent's contract was just extended, and I am not chair. So no, I did not serve, and I was not chair when the last contract extension was extended. Did I extend the contract when I was chair? Yes, I did. Did I hire the superintendent? Yes, I did. Did I support the district model of excellence? Yes, I did. As chairman of the board, am I responsible for management of the district? No, I am not. I am not responsible. No, I'm looking at her. No, I am not. I am not responsible for management. So I know that I had a conversation with you During the convention when I was up for nomination, I know I had conversation with you in the hallway. I am unaware that you specifically wanted to sit down with the board and have a conversation about discrimination. I did a community, I did a community institutional and racist session that had 1,000 people. So if you were talking about those issues, I tried to deal with those issues. But if you're talking about a particular thing, I do not recall you trying to engage me on any individual thing that I could resolve or solve.
There was a very important instance. I took a Peruvian girl who didn't speak English to the Board of Education because they did not wanted to put her in a magnet school. And you know what? One of the administrators told her that she couldn't go to magnet school because she didn't speak English. Can you believe that? And then she said she can only go to Mission, Buckley, or Hartford High, or High School Inc. So I brought that to the superintendent, I brought that to the board of directors, and he was at the board of directors. And
That's a common problem. That's a common problem for our special needs students.
He extended the one more year for $260,000 a year.
Ms. Calderon, it seems to me, this is not to answer the question, but it seems to me that you're dealing with a systemic structural problem that needs to be continually dealt with, and that needs to have administrators and civil servants and other such people pointed out specifically, and you need to juxtapose what they're doing with the policies of the board, and such that you can expose people if in fact they're doing something that is discriminatory or that is racist in any way. All right?
To address that, that's my indifference with the chef local school system. That is a common practice with a lot of our special needs students and our ELL students. They don't get services in magnet schools. They're underserviced, hence why I refer to it as a discriminatory process. And Jamie Crow.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Do I have
I'd like to take this opportunity first to apologize if I have offended anyone with any of my comments, and realizing that it doesn't make me a better person to point out the faults of others. Also, our current mayor got in office with less than 10,000 votes, despite the fact that we have over 125,000 individuals in our community. Section 2 of the state of Connecticut Constitution states that all political power is inherent in the people, and all free government is founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit, and that they shall have at all times an undeniable, indefeasible right to alter their form of government in such manner as they think expedient. And what does that tell us, people? It tells us that we the people have the power. If we want to see change happen in our community, it's going to take us to do it. When I'm out in our community, which is what I was speaking to with a lot of my comments, is what I hear when I knock on doors. It's the word that's on the streets, and the streets have eyes. They're not just paying attention to the shootings that are taking place. We just had 4 individuals get shot last night. A mother and a daughter, because her son was involved in something. He didn't even get hit. I'm in touch with the people of our community, which is what anyone who is up here needs to be, because we're suffering. We're suffering. There's a large divide between the wealth in the city of Hartford and the injustice that takes place with the rest of us. We're suffering. And that's why I'm here, and I wanted to speak to that. People, if we're going to see change happen in Hartford, we have to get out into our community and educate our neighbors, each and every citizen in the city of Hartford, on the importance of voting. I'm not asking anybody to vote for me. I'm asking you to vote your conscience. Do your own research. Don't allow someone to come knock on your door and say, this is who you need to vote for. Be careful. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Know who you're voting for. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mayor? Just a minute. Mayor Broden?
I wanted to address Karen's question about the Caribbean community. So I'm really proud that, at this time that we have, I think it was Michael Downs who was charitable calling him that clown at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, as he's attacking immigrant communities across the country. That was a Stan, I apologize. Stan, okay. It was good.
Thank you. I agree with you.
That we stood strong. That we said we're proud to be a city that values immigrants of all origins, and that we didn't just say that with our rhetoric. Although we have taken lots of opportunities to push back against the hatred that is coming out of Donald Trump and the White House. But beyond that, we did things like creating a municipal ID program so that those who are living in our community, even if they don't have other documents, they can get a city ID, which helps them use other services that are here in the city. We've got we work hand in hand with the Hartford Public Library, which has the America Place, which does tremendous work helping new arrivals and immigrants from everywhere navigate the citizenship process, but also just navigate living in the city. You mentioned the West Indian Social Club. We're lucky. We have a number of social clubs in the city that really are, they play a vital role in keeping our Caribbean community connected to their home, connected to culture, but also, I think, keeping us united and that community united here. And one of the challenges that a lot of them have is the taxes. With the taxes as high as they are, a lot of them fall behind. So what we're trying to do is get a state law change that allows us to forgive some of the old taxes, or at least not charge them interest on it. Because once they get underwater, they have trouble ever getting back above water. So those are a couple of things. But beyond that, we also have our Caribbean community is very active in entrepreneurship. It gets back to those earliest questions that we talked about. How do we partner with our small business to grow? And I won't repeat all of that, but those are a few thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, what I'd like to do, unless I have other people willing to hello, hold a second.
I know, it's like, how many moderators? We have one moderator.
Please, kindly. Okay? Mayor Perez.
I'm going to address the question of achievement for the black community in the north end of Hartford. I would put my record against any mayor in the last 100 years. Not the current mayor, in the last 100 years. No mayor has put $500 million during their tenure in the north end of Hartford. I'm not going to go through each project, but if you have read the North End Agents, there was $500 million. I also put $500 million up. If you follow my trend on the school project and the work we did with the school building, we spent up to now on the model that I set up that Mayor Brumlin continues to mention, all that work that we're doing at Weaver and at Fox, all that began with the school building program that was started under my administration and the model that we've had. I was the first person to create a school building committee and awarded the project management company to 100% minority-owned company.
Mayor
And
Perez,
people have
thank
forgotten
you.
all that.
Thank
So
you.
that's the answer to the question, and that's only the beginning. I have
Thank you.
plenty other more stuff that I did.
Thank you. Brandon, I'm going to ask you something because time is of the essence at this point. Can we hear the questions coming from our 4 audience members, and then you're all going to have the last word. Okay? So can we have the questions, please?
Okay, I have a few questions. Y'all not gonna tell me what to say. We know better than that. Okay, first of all, I would like someone to clarify whether or not the set-aside is still in place, because it was to my understanding that the set-aside was either done away with or a state, I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
That it was challenged and so it's no longer being enforced. That's number one. Number two, what no one really is talking about in terms of children not going to school or young adults not going to school, our children have access to Google. And so they're a little bit more informed about historical things than we are. And so they don't want to go to school to study the white supremacist lie that they've been indoctrinated to from the time they were able to read until they graduated college. So are we going to address the racist white supremacist ideology that exists within our school system, and how we go about that? Because that's a difficult task when you understand that Christopher Columbus was a terrorist, George Washington was a pedophile, and Benjamin Franklin was a rapist. So those are some issues that need to be addressed. The other thing is, there really is no oversight. I worked on just about every single building in the city of Hartford. I've been a Carpenter's Local 43 carpenter for over 33 years. And what they do is they rig the numbers because there's no oversight. So they'll hire a bunch of black folks and rig the numbers, and then they lay them off. And we consider ourselves the merry-go-round workers. So what's someone going to do to address those issues? And the nepotism that goes on as far as who gets property and who gets jobs and who gets contracts, that's also rigged in a way too. And I understand Mr. Bronin alluded to the fact that a lot of some of the contractors can't meet the bond requirements, can't meet the payroll requirements, or can't meet the manpower and skills. What are we going to do to through the educational system to create minority contractors and minority workers? I don't even want to say minority, I hate that word.
Right.
But Hartford City residents.
That's not real.
And I would like to say to that, it's just good business. It's not even about race. If we hire local people, that money stays within the system.
Thanks.
The last question I have is to my constituents. Pastor Stan McCauley said something very, 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 very important. You look at Luke Bronin, this is the state of Black Hartford. And no offense to you, the tap dancing and the James Brown stuff and the double dutching, to me, no disrespect to you, is coonery. Okay? And for those black folks that look like me that say that that's okay, that's bullshit. I don't like it. Please don't do it anymore. Okay. So how much longer as we as constituents are only going to show out? How many votes did you say? 10,000 votes? Less than 10,000 votes? So you really can't blame Bronin for not being black. And you really, I'm serious. Okay, so when are we going to step up and represent ourselves?
Thank you.
And stop going for cooners that look like us and don't look like us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Person behind you. Thanks. We're here. Let's hope it works. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Say your name, please. Michelle Augustine. I reside at 289 Westland Street, right down the street. So he pretty much said what was on my mind. We've talked about a lot of politics and the business of the city and the state representative and all the other things. But the main question is, when are people that don't like us, that don't look like us, why do you want to keep lording over us, taking the benefits of this city that should be given to us, because we are the people here. We own this city because we live here. You don't live with the rats and the roaches and all the other things that come with poor people. It's not because we want those things. It's because we're poor. We don't have the money. We don't have the education. This is my great niece. I have her. And I'm fighting like hell, and I'm going to fight like hell. She is not going to wish. She's not going to sing school. Okay? What school your kids go to? Which one? Where is that at? Is that in Hartford or outside? Well, you work in the city. Your kids ain't good enough to go to the city schools. That's not right. I don't like it. Because now she's being forced to go to a school that's not going to educate her. Look how beautiful she is. And she wants to be educated and learn. So the bottom line is, y'all need to stop coming in this city, get out, give us our downtown back, and be people, be humans, with souls and a heart.
people like that too. But if you don't love the people in the city, you cannot run the city. So all I'm saying is all this fake, phony, perpetration, whatever you want to call it, high stock education, knowledge of the city plans, you have nothing for us. This young man stood here and said it. All y'all want to do is put our young black men in jail, kill them, and then look to the women to do what a man's supposed to do. Release our black men. As a man, get programs to release them, educate them, and bring them back home to their children and their wives and the women that carry the children for them.
Thank you, lady.
Stop being racist.
Thank you.
And be real.
Thank you for the question. Person behind you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Mark Jenkins. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Hartford Harm Reduction Coalition. I said my name is Mark Jenkins. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Hartford Harm Reduction Coalition. I speak for a population that really can't speak for themselves in a conversation that you all seem to stay away from like the plague because it's not popular. But Hartford finds itself and has for the past 6 years the leading city for fatalities as a result of opioids. We stand as the city with the highest number of fatalities year in and year out. The month of June, we took another record in the country, and that was the highest concentration of non-opioid or opioid-naive fatalities, and they were all black individuals. And the narrative still seems to be that there were 5 people that died in a 15-hour period, and they were actually 9. So we still don't have, the information still doesn't come in correctly. And still nobody cares because it's a disposable population. And if it weren't, how could we still be where we are as the most technologically advanced country in the world? Yet we still have 175 people dying daily as a result of fatal overdose. Stigma. Nobody cares. And that's from top on down.
And what is your question, sir?
I lose more hours of my life sitting in meetings like this one right here, where we talk about the state of the situation.
I get that, but what is your question?
And nothing. My question again is, would you all have that ability to take that bullet, to stand out, and help to affect the change, especially when you have an organization that has the tools at hand that can affect the change in our city?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next person. Say your name.
Oh, my name is Larry George. My residence is 550 Main Street, happens to be City Hall. Here's the question. We've all agreed that we're proud of people who live in the city and can work in the city and can hold good, solid union jobs and stay with it and be retained and kept rather than wind up in prison. My question is, just like they did on TV, for a show of hands, would everyone pledge where we have a good city worker, like in Public Works, unionized, to keep those people who perform rather than lay them off and outsource to some company that's outside of Hartford or even outside the state, where we have had that in recent years. Good city workers laid off, supposedly saving money, but spending more money outside the city, miles away, under private contractors, and we know who they look like.
Thank you.
Doesn't happen to be us, so to speak.
Thank
But
you.
could there be a pledge?
Thank you. Okay, so we have our pledge. Thank you. Brandon, respond.
All right. Yes, we all say yes. Thank you, Dr. Deutsch. I'm going to go backwards. So, to the opioid crisis, I do remember you coming to the state legislature and to request support. There was going to be a closure of one of the facilities in Hartford that serviced many Hartford residents, and we were successful in that. And I think from that conversation at the state capitol, it allowed for us to share or leverage that platform to highlight a systemic issue.
That's why you should stay at the state level. That's why you should stay at the state level.
Okay. So that would allow us to create a platform to leverage the work that you're doing and to also restore funding there. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, but I think what we need to do, and I appreciate the comment of doing such a great job on the state level, I'd love to do it on the local level. So again, we'll provide some more funding to that. The other piece, when we're talking about racism in our school system, that was brought up, it's important that we realize that Black and Latino and Puerto Rican studies does not start with slavery. That's number one, okay? And we have to begin teaching our children the importance of, pardon? Oh, before then. It starts way in Africa, man. You build it. All right, so we have a rich history, all right? And one of the things that we've done was to encourage more minority, Black and Latino, Puerto Rican teachers to be recruited and to teach our children. All right? The other piece, incentivize housing for teachers and public safety officers to live in our city. That's key. And then lastly, and I know there's a lot, I'd like to, for the social clubs, and particularly the West Indian Social Club, sportsmen, I remember years ago working with the board and learning their vision of creating a hub for young children, seniors, provide opportunities for job training in that facility. But it's going to take the city of Hartford and other investors to work alongside these community groups that are providing opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be there. So we should definitely support our social clubs.
Thank you very much, Representative McGee. Now, of course, time is not on our side. Hold a second, Michael. I'm going to do this and then bring the event to somewhat of a close. We are at 9 o'clock. What I would like to ask all of you, because I think, we can continue the conversation afterwards, obviously, is who or whose candidacy for mayor of the city of Hartford would you support other than your own? Please answer that question. Starting here. Starting here. Andre?
Honestly, I mean, I don't got no answer.
Okay, fine. You support yourself. That's good. Yeah. Mr. Stallings.
I actually don't have an answer either right now either.
Okay. Mayor Broden.
Look, we're all in the middle of the election. We're all running. No one's going to say that they want to support somebody else. Come on. Look, you know what I tell you? I'll tell you. I think. I think that Gwendolyn Thames has done a tremendous job as city council president right now, and I think she'd be a great mayor someday.
But she's not
Who is
here.
that? I'm sorry.
You just said who would you support?
No, I said whose candidacy? Whose candidacy? Of those people here.
I'll tell you after we have more time.
Of those people here. Okay, pass. Ms. Jacobs. Let's see here.
Ms. Jacobs, as a descendant of a grandfather who is a lifetime member at the West Indian Club, born in St. Kitts, 93 years old, residing in Windsor, and a World War II veteran, I have enough courage to answer the question. I would support Brandon McGee as mayor.
Thank you for that. Mayor Perez.
Señoras y señores, el apoyo es para mí. I want to be your mayor, and I support myself. That's what I started to do, and I'm going to do that to the end.
Okay, I hear you. Brandon?
This wasn't planned, but I promise you, I would say I would support Giselle Jacobs because of her tenacity. No, seriously. Her tenacity, her grit, and her perseverance to always stand before people who tell her what she cannot do.
Thank you. Hold on. You got to go back. Hold on. Michael?
Hi. No, I don't want to commit myself because we all run because we have ideas that we want to present, and we have opinions that we want to present, and we also listen to other people's opinions. So whatever I'm saying, whatever I'm doing, I hope that everyone's listening and watching. And if they happen to become mayor and it's not me, then I hope they listen to what I had to say.
Okay, good enough. Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Mr. McCauley.
This is an interesting dilemma. Because words mean things. This is being recorded. People are going to bite the answer, put it on the air.
Right.
All right. But my wife is over there saying, don't do it.
She turned it off.
She knows better. All right. Because I have become the unofficial confidant of so many people in this city, and truth is my currency and capital, I will answer this question honestly and truly, knowing full well that it will not jeopardize my capacity to win the election.
Okay.
There are only 2 people in this room, on this stage, that are qualified to step into that office November the 6th and run the city. If we're talking about sheer qualifications, like if you're on an airplane and the pilot got shot, who do you want to fly the plane? Put your differences to the side. This is a life or death question as to who will be able to run the city. Now, if y'all can't figure out the answer to that question,
I am not going to tell you.
I'm not going to tell you. Because we're in bigger trouble than I could begin to imagine. And if you can't answer the question, I don't know if I'll want to be mayor.
I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that.
Who do you trust, Hartford? Come
Thank
on.
you, thank you, thank you. And
Can I,
with
wait,
that,
wait, can I just interrupt 1 second? I have to put in some background. No, I have to put in some background. Ever since some of us filed as candidates, and I'm talking back since January, we've been pressured to get out the race because of this quote-unquote split vote. So the reason why I did not think about it is because I have not been confronted with it yet. We have not petitioned yet, and I am still viable as far as I'm concerned. Amen. But will I work for the city of Hartford? Absolutely, because I've been doing that, and I'll continue to do that. So that's my whole answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, it is now, I think, perhaps 9:10 or thereabouts, 9:11 or thereabouts. We have a 9 o'clock closure. I hope that this forum has given some of you at least an opportunity to think about who among these 8 people you will support or you will promote for the mayoral position within the city of Hartford. I thank you for attending and for staying. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Thomas, thank you for your phone. That was
Independent thinkers are Puerto Rican, Mexican, Peruvian, Indian, Bosnian, Italian, Irish, Jamaican, African American, European, straight, gay, Nigerian, transgender, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, short, tall, skinny, rich, poor, happy, sad. Some of us hold a PhD. and others a GED. And though we may be Democrats, Republicans, or members of the Working Families Party, we all have escaped the plantation of party politics and become independent thinkers because we as individuals are more than a party. You see, independent thinkers come from all walks of life, and the one thing we all have in common is that we love, live, laugh, and learn in the city of Hartford. We are the constituents, and the government of Hartford belongs to us. My name is J. Stan McCauley. I'm an independent thinker, and I approve this message because it's time to stop towing the party line and vote for a candidate you can trust. I'm asking you for your vote November the 5th, 2019 in the general election for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. You too can escape the plantation of party politics if you have the courage to free your political mind.